He was getting girls to kill themselves. A guy named Matthew Falder, he went by Evil Mind was his moniker.
You've been in countless undercover operations, and really all over the world, confronting child traffickers.
Normal people, your bank teller, your doctor, your lawyer, your judge, your politician, some white man in power of some sort, or some lowlife that's out there. Sometimes we have to target the location of potential trafficking. It's like a 16-day operation. We corrupted the supply chain. So by somebody getting caught, there is then fear brought into that whole supply chain of that child.
A child's life is on the line and in your hands.
It gets hard. You know, sometimes you just can't get them and it eats you alive. If you don't believe in God after this, there's something wrong with you.
You've been in countless undercover operations and really all over the world confronting child traffickers. What's it like knowing that a child's life is on the line and in your hands?
Man, so there's two ways to look at this, right? So sometimes you actually know the victim, and we know sometimes we have the target. Sometimes we have the location of potential trafficking. So it gets hard, right? Like there's certain situations and stories like in Thailand where I've been undercover and I'm talking to a girl and I'm going to come back for him, and you know sometimes you just can't get them and it eats you alive. I think the harder ones are when you have somebody like a guy named Matthew Falder, who went by Evil Mind was his moniker, and he was getting girls to kill themselves. And so he was blackmailing them through the dark web. So he would go on a platform called Gumtree, which is similar to Craigslist, to like dog walking. And he would pay these young girls and he would act like a woman. They would start texting, they'd build a relationship. He'd get them to send some pictures of bras or things like that, or some kind of incriminating evidence on them. And then he would do a lot of open source intelligence, what my background was, and research their families. And if they did not do what he said to do, he would then send it to them. He was purposely trying to get them to kill themselves. And so for 5 years, NCA, Homeland Security, and then I got brought into the case. I was in North Carolina. I had just left Homeland Security, but I would still help on cases. I was really good at working open source intelligence back then, or creative ways of getting data that we shouldn't have access to, like kind of breaking Facebook and other things. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey, just come sit on this call and listen in. And so this Agent Jim, I'll leave him, Special Agent Jim, we'll call him. And he's like, just sit in the room, don't say anything. And it's like FBI, NCA, HSI, and it's all around the world. But we have a victim now in North Carolina. And they couldn't find him for 5 years. And then they talk all this for this long talk. And then at the end, he's like, hey, I got a guest here that wants to say something. Glenn, what do you have to say? And I'm like, completely blown off. Everybody is quiet. I just made a comment like, I don't care how bad this guy thinks he is, we're going to fucking find him. Mm-hmm. And from that point, it was insane. Like they gave me, I had the whole case file of 5 years. I mean, we went back to old school of I had massive whiteboards in my office at the time, and I would just plot out every email. So we didn't know where he was in the world, right? We had a feeling maybe because of some accent that he was in the UK, and had to find the time. So we plotted out the times of when he was active versus when he was sleeping, when he was replying. And we're like, there's a solid chance that he's in the UK. And then we thought potentially he was some kind of educated individual, a professor, or somebody of some sort. And then it was get creative. So we looked at, could we find hackers that could hack VLC, media player? Could we send them a payload? We're not going to do it, right? We created creative ideas. You're working with law enforcement. So you can find out this network of individuals I have in my network and say, hey, could we do this, do that? And people get creative and we send a plan back to law enforcement. They can get it blessed off on and they can do the attack or whatever it may be. So just going through, and I read every single email for every kid pleading and crying. And, I could just see all communications from back and forth. And you want to just see evil. It still messes you up thinking about them. Yeah. And so it's you see this evil in these individuals and these poor kids. They have no help. They have no reason to talk to their mom. And I think one of the most important things with your children is to make sure that they know that they can talk to you. Right. So these guys that go and manipulate these children and how pure evil they are. And what it turned out was I talked to some very high profile billionaires hacker. I had found some stuff in the Matrix. There was a header in an email that just felt off. I knew he was on a Windows PC. I knew a bunch of other things that he was operating on. I slowly started pulling these little breadcrumbs, and there's this one piece of data that they had, and I sent it off, and the guy came back and he's like, "Hey, is this tied to a guy named Evil Mind?" And I'd never given him the username because I couldn't share like data from the case, but I could share the like some bits, and he did, and so. And the guy was like, "Hey, how do I know you're not going to violate privacy if I help you out?" And I was like, "I'll get on a plane." Like, pulled up my phone. I was like, "I'll get on a plane right now. I'll be in LA in 6 hours, whatever it is." And so he agrees to help. We pass it off, and we pass it off to the NCA, GCHQ. Every special agent got the GCHQ Medal of the Year award, and we got an email that said thank you. And so when you go back to like the victim side, is he was just one guy of part of a ring.
Wait, so what happened with this guy?
He got the largest sentence in UK history for any pedophile.
So it was in UK.
Yeah, he was a geophysicist, I think out of Cambridge.
Wow.
Yeah, you can look it up. Matthew Fowler. He's an evil son of a bitch. You see him, and hopefully, unfortunately, he's going to see the light again because of UK laws.
Really?
Yeah, he'll get out. I mean, this is the first time a case was ever consecutively. Like technically, he should have got 5 years. Because if they tried in the UK, and please don't quote me on this, but this is how it was like if you do the act, even though you have enough for 100 years, they can only try you for that one act, and they can only give you like 5 years. So to get like 36 years that I think it was huge.
Wow.
For it, yeah. And so those victims that you have from that side, like I think about those little girls all the time, and I have young girls myself, of like hoping to God that they'll communicate with me. To not have those secrets with those individuals, to not build that trust with random people online for it. So you get the cyber side, and then you get the on the ground side where, when I went to Bangladesh, long story short, I rescued a girl on BBC World News where I had to figure out, we knew trafficking was existing in Bangladesh refugee camps.
Mm-hmm.
Like foreigners were going in and basically buying kids, and we had communication from the dark web. This guy, I don't want to say his username, but DARPA had created and grabbed this information. BBC was working with DARPA, and this guy gave a rat line perfectly of how to bring kids back to the U.S. So instead of going and having sex with a kid, bring your own sex slave back home.
Wow.
And you would fly to, I don't want to give the details in a rat line, but he would give this rat line of go to here, do this, play this person, do that. And so BBC called me up. I knew some people at DARPA. They talked about it. I go up to DARPA for the meeting. They're like, got this information? I was like, I don't even know where Bangladesh the fuck is, but I was like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 2016, and I went. It was like a 16-day operation, and you kind of proved we corrupted the supply chain. So by somebody getting caught, there is then fear brought into that whole supply chain of that child. So I got a 15-year-old girl out by acting exactly like they were saying. So
and so they were bringing kids back to America?
That's what they were talking about in the dark web. They were given very detailed, like, of how to get them back through the U.S. Their IDs won't get checked here. Yeah, it's a hard case.
Wow.
Yeah, for it. So it's like this whole thing about bringing your own sex slave home and kids being locked up. And yeah, it does exist. I mean, I've seen these guys communicate now. Now, whether that's a fantasy and the guy's talking about it, but he was given a full international travel guide.
A lot of people say that there's not a real problem with sex trafficking in the United States. And, it was interesting to me, because we started working on, or Scott Dederick and I started working with the Operation Lightshine, when it first started. We had helped fund a documentary that Nick Nanton did called It's Happening Right Here, talking about the trafficking in the U.S. And so we're very involved. And then all of a sudden, it became political. Like, if you are suggesting there's child trafficking going on or that's a problem, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I never thought that there would be a debate over how important it is to fight against child trafficking. So I ask you, as someone who's worked, obviously, as close as anyone in the field, how much child trafficking do you think is going on right now in the United States?
Look, it's massive. Why do we have so many missing kids every year? What, you think kids are just disappearing? You know how hard it is if I wanted to evade the feds and the IRS? Like, not just disappearing, right? Like it's so hard nowadays with all the digital, and kids aren't just missing and vanishing and you're not finding the bodies anymore, right? Like there is some serious trafficking going on. I think there's just different levels of it. There's prostitution from age 16 where they get them on drugs, they bring them in. There's missing kids. There's guys that are traveling abroad that doing it. There's guys that are, sex trafficking, but also raping their kids at home, right? The amount of child abuse that happens during COVID, I want to say in the northeast region or southeast region, they're talking about Charlotte. When I was talking with Homeland Security, in the first 4 months, we had 1 million plus intakes of IP addresses and violations of child. These are like anything from infants to teenagers being raped. So during that period of time, so you have this huge demand that people are just consuming this material. Now, I would say if you look at the political system and why it's political, I think if you look at the numbers, why do we spend $2.2 billion to protect our children from drugs, but we spend $100 million to protect their innocence?
Yeah.
Right? And they cut $20 million out. Like, don't quote me on the exact number. I was told there's $20 million was cut out of the child crimes and $200 million was cut out of like the DEA budget. So you have you have $2 billion for it, and we have $80 million we're talking federal, state, locals. I feel like those numbers should be reversed. Yeah. I feel like we should be spending $2 billion for anyone that is raping a child. Because if we're going to look at just political, like take out like what is right and what is wrong, a child that is raped and abused, like you know how hard it is to heal that?
Yeah.
And what do they do in society? They're saying there's studies and research that then potentially they become the abuser.
Yeah.
Right. And if they don't, then, it's like you see guys that are fighting it because now they're in the fight because they were abused. Like there's so many different levels of when a child's innocence is removed of what it does to society. And we spend the least amount of money on that. Look at what we spend internationally in these foreign wars and everything else. Like, why are we not protecting? I just had a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago with a few senators that really care about this, that want to make a change and make a statement and get money behind this cause. And see, I'm trying. The Tim Tebow Foundation, they're trying. They're up on Capitol Hill. There's people today they're talking to Senate about this issue. It's just, I always use this example of in India, girls were being raped by 18 men, gang rapes all the time. And then the people rose up. 1 million people marched on the Capitol. 2 million people marched. Now they have death sentences. When was the last time you heard about an 18 guys raping a young girl?
Yeah.
You don't.
Absolutely.
Because fear. You have to fear. The only reason we don't kill people is not because of other reasons, except you're afraid to go to jail.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you don't have those strict penalties, those strict fears, then people are going to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm all for making the drug laws, more reasonable sentence wise, like the mandatory minimum. Federal mandatory minimum drug laws are insane to me. But the idea that you're going to go light on violent offenders, especially sex crime offenders, especially those that are abusing children, is insane to me. It doesn't make any common sense. And to me, it shows that there's probably something behind that, because maybe those that are pushing these laws have a bunch of friends in that field.
I would 100% agree with you. You see it through party lines, but we would have a case where individual was, like downloading, sharing child sexual abuse material. We tried in Western District of North Carolina. He's getting his 20 years, whatever it is. We go to Middle District, North Carolina. He's getting off. You're like, what's
going on here?
What's going on here? Like, are you sympathetic to pedophilia? Like, I don't know. It pretty much seems like it, because that's an infant being raped.
Yes.
Like, why would you not? And they use the excuse, I think some of these judges, and I think one of the women that they were nominating for the Supreme Court, was they didn't think it was an issue because it is a non-interactive crime or non-hands-on offense, where they're just consuming it and watching it. But the videos they're watching are some child. By consuming it, you're creating the demand, and somebody's paying for that. That's why I didn't get into crypto. I've been on crypto forever. I was just morally, because I've been doing this since 2012 or 2014. Like I couldn't get into crypto because there's so many pedophiles that got rich because they were all trading their material based on Bitcoin.
I see.
All of them. Like there's so many rich pedophiles from the cryptos if they kept their coins and everything like that.
Sure.
But it was one of those things where they were just funneling this money and they were going into it and creating this demand. So there's these different series that are created that go through. And it's not they say it's a victimless crime because they're just watching it. But if I like blondes and I'm watching blonde porn, I'm going out to a bar and I see a blonde, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to fill my need. That's exactly what it is. And so he may not have abused the child yet because he's just watching these videos, but the second he gets left home with his niece,
Sure.
he's going to explore that fantasy.
Yeah.
Right? That neighbor's kid comes over for a sleepover. He's going to explore that fantasy. Right? It's just a matter of time.
Well, and I think that they're pushing towards normalizing pedophilia. I think there is a group, and it's interesting because if you said how many, I don't know what the percentage is. And let's say 10%, 20% are trying to normalize it, but it's the other 30% that might go along with it someday because they're so easily influenced into just doing what's virtuous or is virtue signaling, well, but it's not right. And these people just have an illness and we should treat it like an illness. And, we see how good we do at treating mental illness in this country. And so I felt like a lot of what we're seeing with the trans agenda and with the LGBTQ rights, and I'm not against, gay marriage, or I'm not saying that gay people are bad by any means, but that movement really got co-opted by, this trans agenda. And I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think, the debate of a child transitioning before they're 18 is the same as gay rights. I don't see it as the same thing at all. But I feel like they're doing that because the more they normalize certain sexual preferences, they then take it further and further, and eventually they want to go after the kids.
I couldn't agree with you more. I liken it very much to the Second Amendment battle that we have. The reason why the right won't give up, even though we all agree that probably some training needs to happen and things like that, but the second we won't give an inch is because we know they'll take a mile.
Yes.
Right? And so with that, that's exactly what they're doing. They're like, oh, it's okay. We just have to give rights. They have to be in the same bathroom with them. Right? Like this is a playbook written from, I don't know if it's Soros or who, but it's exactly step by step, exactly like you just said. Let's just do a little bit and just do a little bit more, just do a little bit. Now we're in California, they're seizing their kids. If you don't agree with them chopping their genitals off, which is insane. If they would have had that headline 5 years ago, we wouldn't.
Yes.
But like you said, they slowly start doing it. They slowly start pulling it away. And next thing you know, they normalize this minor attractive persons.
They're trying to change
they
the
think
name.
that is okay. And I would say it is 100% demonic. I don't care if people are religious or spiritual, they don't believe in God. You can watch some of these interviews. You can look inside these guys' eyes. It's pure evil. It is pure evil of like they're torturing. Like I got a call like 2 weeks ago, and it's a 1 month old, and the federal government could not find where this individual was, and they're like, "Hey, do you have any ideas?" And I'm like, "A 1 month old, and it's not about even sexually; it's physically torturing." Right? Like that is the amount of evil. I know this is hard to say, but it's like that's the level you're talking about here with pedophilia.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is the level of these individuals. This is pure evil. This is good versus evil. And then like it was crazy because before I started this fight, like I was an atheist. And this cop in Houston was like, he said to me, he's like, this is before I got into I was getting into my forensic school because I went through a special pipeline where they teach you for 12 weeks and like 4 of the weeks are about the psychology behind pedophilia and all these things. And world experts come in, and this cop says to me, I'll never forget, he's like, if you don't believe in God after this work, he's like, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because he's like, once you see that level of evil, you know there's that level of good. I thought it was a very powerful statement. It took me time and years to come to Christ eventually, but it was just one of those things. It was like, yeah. And then you see these people and you're like, holy shit, like they're walking around near us. And these aren't people on drugs.
Yeah, these are normal
people that are I don't know, your bank teller, your doctor, your lawyer, your judge, your politician, you know, like some white man in power of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah, or some low life that's out there. But
How did you get involved in this? Like, what's your military background?
yeah, so I was like infantry, and then I worked counterintelligence, human intelligence, counterterrorism. I, you know, worked intel over like a tier one, you know, just regular intel stuff. And then 2014, I got medically retired. And for me, I'm very, I guess you would say anti-war. You know, I think Iraq was complete bullshit. I lost a lot of friends from it. And I was drinking the Kool-Aid for so long. And then eventually I stopped drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some things after, you know, like in the counterterrorism world where I'm like, why aren't we killing these people? We have where they're at. And like, it was all politically motivated. We weren't doing things if the polls were down or they were down, we were doing things. And it really opened my eyes to Iraq being bullshit. You know, Afghanistan, I thought we should have went in and killed and got out. But we just lost a lot of lives. But I had I was very talented at hunting individuals down and being creative and innovative. And so, you know, I saw this like Discovery Channel about like this Halo Corps. This dude got hit in the face with like a machete rescuing his kid. I was like, that's fucking cool. I was like, I want to go take these skill sets and like rescue a kid. I want something that is very black and white. I don't want to get out of the gray. And so I like Googled, this is back in 2014. There was like nothing out there. I think OUR had just started.
Yep.
At that point in time, Tim just left and he was going over there to start OUR. And I wrote to them, didn't get anything back. And then I went into a special program where they took special operations, soldiers, intel support operators, and trained you in digital forensics to then watch digital forensic shit. So I already had mobile. I've been doing mobile forensics since 2005 in the intel world. And so it was an easy transition to go into that. And it's 1 year unpaid. So I packed my whole family up. I was a single dad at the time, brought my kids. I had to stay in North Carolina because I'm cussing my kids I had at the time. And moved to Charlotte, did the full year unpaid. And like, man, like 3 months in, I was just like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like I had like the worst anxiety. I could no longer bathe my kids. I could no longer I was dying on the inside. So I was like, I really want to, and I was being creative. I was like, the agents I was working with loved me. I was terrible at writing reports, but I was really good at like thinking of clues and how to go about it. So they actually offered me a direct hire special agent because I was like, I'm not doing this forensic. I want to be an agent. And then that took time to get that direct hire because DC, this is during the freeze. So they had to make this special exception. They were going to make me an agent, all these things. And then
An agent for what?
Homeland Security.
I see.
Yeah, it was like a goal. I was like, I want to be a federal agent. I'm going to do this work, everything like that. And so they made an exception. Homeland Security leadership were like, yeah, we'll hire you as a special agent. And then so it takes like 3 months, or it took like a long time because it was weird during the like sequestration, whatever that hell is going on during that period of time. And during that time, I started working with Operation Underground Railroad. And I wound up going like undercover in 8 different countries in a year all over the world. And we had guys that couldn't be found that I was finding, like we were installing cameras in their places, working with like these governments. I was like, this is amazing. Like you could just not have all the bullshit and have all the fun. And, you know, your left limit is like really just working with the police and then not getting arrested and doing things legally. And then, so I was like undercover in Haiti and Nicaragua and Thailand. So it really was one of those things where it was like, I was getting results. I was seeing people getting captured and kids being rescued. So, that's kind of like what started me to get into that work, really, was the thrive, the adrenaline rush, the addiction, the seeing, the helping. Yeah.
Yeah. You've worked in 16 countries now. How do you adapt so quickly to the different cultures when you're undercover?
You know, like, people always ask me, like, you know, just like I travel around where I get that often. Like, how do you go in? I would say, man, like, I think 90% of the world, we're all the same.
Yeah.
You know, like we're all the same. I think there's always, you know, 10% assholes in every country you go to. There's some really good people, but everyone for the most part is really nice. If you go in with a smile, if you go in happy as in helping, they want you to be there, right? They want your support. And when you take somebody like my team's background and you take them to a foreign country where they could never afford us. You know, I was training every 3-letter agency around the world from the UK to Europe, all these countries. They would pay me a lot of money to come train them on these techniques, and then I'm giving them to free to like this local cop,
Mm.
like in Ecuador. I trained like these 27 cops in Ecuador, and we're still friends. Like they still call me, and they loved it. And like live in class, I got a lead that came in from this girl, this like 3-year-old that was being raped. And they were like, what can we pause class right there? They got to see what you're made of, found the girl, where she lived. They rescued her that night, like kicked in the door, got him. And like, so you build those relationships first, and everyone they go and they drink some cervezas, you hang out, like you all have the bond with each other. From like, I think like every country I've been to, from Haiti to, recently on the borders of Gaza and things like that, like everyone's pretty much the same. As long as you go in there, I think Americans make the problem is they're so cocky and arrogant. Like 30% of Americans have passports. Like and you walk into these countries and you think that you own it or you're better than them.
Yeah.
If you humble yourself and you walk through a refugee camp and you are just very grateful of who you are and where you come from, you have an amazing time everywhere you go.
Yeah. You've talked about the emotional toll that working in child trafficking rescues has on people.
Yeah.
Describe the toll that's taken on you.
Yeah, man. Like obviously you still see it. Like it gets me choked up when I talk about certain things because like I have a photographic memory, and so it makes me really good at my job. And so like when I talk about certain things, they just flash up, and you can't really get rid of it. Now for the emotional toll, people were like, oh, go talk to a shrink. There was no talking to a shrink. Cause like, dude, I feel like I re-talk this, I'm fucking you up. You know, like, like I'm messing you up, or like, I don't want to push that negative energy like that you're holding onto the individual. Cause you don't want to even, like if I had to describe some of the stuff that you see, it would really ruin you. You would then get those triggers. And so it's like you push it. So you're like, what are your options? They'll try giving you all these other things that just kill who you are as a person, like the Zolofts. And I did all that during the military time when they load you up when you get out because you think you're depressed, but you're really not. You're just finding your new way. For me, it was plant medicine. I was crazy because I was supposed to go undercover to Quito, Peru, and the number one thing there was this thing called ayahuasca. And like, we're idiots. I'm like, we'll just go down there, we'll do some fucking ayahuasca, and then we'll be undercover the next day. I had fucking no idea what it was. Luckily, this was like 2 days before COVID. We were getting down there, and then the U.S. government was shutting up. So we flew back, so we never did the ayahuasca.
I see.
And so you fast forward 7 months, I'm at a really low spot. Like, COVID's happening. Like, all my companies are on the ropes now because I have defense contract companies. I have all these things. And I have my nonprofit, but like, I'm not working undercover. I'm not getting my soul filled or my bank account filled. And I was just at a low point. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to manage all this. And the ayahuasca came back to my brain. And they said the medicine's called you. So I flew down. I went to this place called Solterra. It was like a high-end place. And after my second ceremony, it completely just like took all the weight from them. Like I still have some of it. Like it doesn't cure you. But it just took, I think, like 90% of that weight off of my shoulders. Yeah. Really gave me that cleansing that I needed. And so that started my plant medicine journey. So I've done like 14 ayahuasca ceremonies over a 2-year period. Then I went into like San Pedro. I went into Iboga. I went into Bufo. Like I feel like and mushrooms, I feel like there is a medicine depending on what you're going through. Right? I think.
What was the San Pedro like?
It is amazing. You have to come do it with me. It is. They call it God's LSD. Okay. It is it's like a loving father. With Chuma is what they call it down in Peru. I did it in the sacred valleys of the Incas. So I'm in this like mountain range. All the clouds are rolling in. You're outside and you're fucking drumming beats and there's fire and it's like amazing. It's love, but it's also, one time I died 1,000 times. Like it was like I took a huge dosage of it and it is very powerful. I mean, I was bleeding out my nose. It was like,
what caused that?
Well, so you take the cactus, like the first 2 hours, your stomach is kind of going through the process for it. But it was like, it really breaks you like down, but then it is so much love. It really is. Like if you ever, they say like ayahuasca or like LSD or like mushrooms is like, kind of watching TV. And ayahuasca is like you're in the fucking TV. Yeah. I think with San Pedro, you get both. You can go from like just being outside and the grass growing on you and like feeling amazing to like, oh shit, like really some deep learning. I think it's the most underrated plant medicine out there.
Yeah. How long is that experience?
So you do 3 ceremonies. I do with really a guy named Bernard. He has, and Niels and Frankie, like I love them. They host all my retreats because I'll usually do a private retreat or I'll do a custom one down there, and they are some of the best healers and facilitators.
Awesome.
Yeah, they go through it, and so the ceremony itself can last anywhere from like 8 to 12. It's usually like 8 to 9 hours, and you do it during the daytime for it, and then you do usually 2 or 3 ceremonies in a week's period of time.
Wow. In
between that, you're doing sweat tents and other things and breath work and other things. So I try to do at least 1 retreat a year, depending on what I think I need to going into the following year, the next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never done San Pedro. I heard it was like an MDMA of plant medicine.
They call it God's LSD.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's the best one.
And so you say the ceremony is 8 or 9 hours, but how long is the actual, strong effects?
Yeah, you're talking probably like 4 to 6, 7.
Okay.
It's a long one. It's longer
compared to like ibogaine. It's not.
Well, compared to ibogaine,
I compare everything to ibogaine.
Yeah, you can't that one's a whole different animal. We both got killed by that one.
Oh my gosh.
God, dude.
Yeah. I did ibogaine 3 different times.
3?
Yes. And the first time, and by the way, the place I did it at is a place called Iboga Quest. My friend Barry runs it. He's an older guy, a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
Just a great man. And, I did it for my opiate issue from I think it was like probably 2008, 2009. And went down there. I was pretty skeptical, but I'd watched a couple documentaries. I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a try. And I blew my knee and got addicted to the pain pills from the doctors. And a therapist said, hey, go down there and Google ibogaine, checked it out. I'm like, yeah, let's give it a try. So, I did it, and it was deeply, deeply introspective, and it was so long. And, but I was home 72 hours later, never had a withdrawal, never had a craving. And then I did it 2 more times, and just for psychospiritual, but the 3rd time basically spit me out, and I'll never do it again. Yeah. But, I compare all the psychedelics to ibogaine.
It's I think they all have their own spirit, as they say, and like that iboga, like ibogaine comes from iboga, which comes from the African tree root for it, and like I completely agree with you. Anything with addiction, like my kids, anybody ever goes through it, I'm flying them down, doing ibogaine with them. Like I have done iboga, I've done it, and that rocked me pretty good. Like for me, like I had to find a healthy relationship with alcohol, like, and that like highlighted it. I didn't realize it was like, hey, if you keep going this way, and I have an anti-hangover company, it's like you keep being an idiot, like you're gonna get it. And I felt like iboga was like an old wise grandpa that just is like hard, smacks you, and just gives it to you as raw as it can.
Yeah.
For it, but I it's the first place I take anybody for addiction. I struggle. They put me on 8 Percocets a day, and man, like I quit that thing cold turkey and almost killed myself off of it. It was the most horrific time of my life.
Well, I mean, the idea that they would put you on 8 Percocets a day. I mean, you're an addict in 4 weeks at that point. There's no getting off of it without going through a horrible withdrawal.
Yeah.
And the opiates. It takes time. It takes time. Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're looking at what, 3 to 7 days. 3 days intense, but then you're gonna have. It's bad. And that was my issues. I just couldn't get over that withdrawal. That's what I told the therapist. I'm like, I'm functional running my companies, but I'd rather have a clear brain and deal with the pain than a foggy brain and no pain. And, it worked really, really
That's what I'm saying. Like if you went and did that, completely didn't have the withdrawals, like phenomenal.
Oh,
I was stuck for 5 days, just sitting there. Worst 5 days, longest 5 days of my life.
Yes.
Of going through it. And people don't like, why are we sending all these homeless down to Mexico? Right? Like, how much did they spend? Like $2 billion in California for homeless?
It was more than that.
Was it?
It was an average. I averaged it out. It was around $150,000 per homeless person they spent. Homeless person.
You could put a center on every corner of ibogaine.
Oh yeah.
And you would have no homeless because most of them are addicted.
Yeah.
Most of them have child traumas.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the problem solved, like you say, but also there's until a politician has a cut into the ibogaine clinic,
Yeah.
they're not going to funnel the money. You know what I mean? Like, we just start rewarding, the politicians so they get paid if they open an ibogaine clinic. Then it would be everywhere.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's ibogaine works really well.
Yeah.
There's no, you know it, I know it, I've experienced it, you've experienced it, and it's sad that something like that isn't available, for addicts, especially considering the crisis that we have right now. All the stuff coming through our southern border with the fentanyl, the opiate epidemic that really happened because Purdue Pharma was just greedy, evil people.
Yeah.
That I mean, they've murdered. I look at it as murder.
100%.
They've murdered millions of people with their marketing techniques.
They generationally changed families.
Yes.
Right? I mean, the only reason I knew I was an addict because I was watching Drug Inc.
Mm-hmm.
And all these guys were saying they're on heroin because they started on Percocets. And I looked down, I'm like, I'm on Percocets.
Yeah.
You're like, that's where it goes to?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm, fucking on the streets. And like, how many families are ruined because they were making money and incentivizing doctors to give these pills?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had specific keywords that they would use for the doctors to say. I forget what those words were. Hey, can you look that up, Warren? Purdue Pharma is like not safe and effective, but something about pain. I saw it in the documentary. I'm like, oh man, I heard the doctor tell me that before. Mm-hmm. And there was like a sheet that would give you different levels. And if somebody's an addict at that point, they're going to want more and more and more.
Yeah.
And it started, for most people, with an injury, then they'd move you up to OxyContin. And then when people couldn't get enough OxyContin, then they would go to the streets for heroin. That's how strong the addiction is. And I'm thankful I never got that far, but it could have easily been either one of us.
I think back all the time of like, man, like God saved me. Mm-hmm. Like my kids, at the time I had a 5-year-old and 3-year-old and I was taking care of them at that point in time. Yeah. Like my first wife, she's an amazing woman, but she was taking care of herself at that point in time. And so I'm like, I look back, I'm like, holy shit, like that could have been me. And like, I grew up in Philly. And right now, if you go to Philly and look at Kensington Avenue, it is the Walking Dead. Mm. And the opiate crisis, the fentanyl crisis, the other drugs that they're on is absolutely insane. But I think it's just we were one of the few lucky ones.
We were. Yeah, I mean, I feel like God saved me too, multiple times. I mean, I look back all the times I should have been dead. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm like, okay, God, I think you have a plan for me, so I'm going to stick around and do my best to live a decent life.
Yeah. But I'm going to keep helping others.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. I feel like that's, when you look at like our lives and certain things that we've had to overcome, it's not just us overcoming it. It's something that's bigger than us that's allowing us to get through those things.
I couldn't agree more. Like if I look back at some of the rescues, I don't like, I don't have an ego from it. I'm like, God, like God made that happen.
Yeah.
Like the fact, like on the, like some of the operations where it's like, if this didn't go exactly right in this way, if I didn't go this way or say this thing, that kid's not rescued.
Right.
Right. And like, you're like, I would sit there and like with the Bangladesh, I'm just sitting there drinking this Heineken at this place after this whole operation. I'm like, that's very strange. Like there's just the odds mathematically don't make any sense. Like that guy shouldn't have came here. He should have saw that cop. The whole side of it. So, I'm a big believer, and I was 100% successful in every operation I was going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are the odds of that? No, I'm like he's working through me. I'm just doing his work.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I look at it now as like to spread the word. After I was baptized, of like, life is good. Like he has a purpose for you.
Yeah, absolutely. When did you become a Christian?
So last November, when the whole Gaza operation, I went solo over there, basically
in Gaza,
Rafah, the Gaza
Rafah.
border crossing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's ISIS territory. It's called Al Arish in Egypt. But the way it kind of started was like, it's kind of crazy because I knew like October 7th happened and I was like, hey, we should start preparing for this. And for us is like, even Ukraine, I was there with that whole crisis, right? Like I don't play political. I don't care. I know that there are women and children in war zones that are going to need help. We have American citizens that are going to need help. I don't care if they're Palestinian. I don't care if they're Israeli. I don't care, whatever. I'm going to go to that area. And so I wound up going to Israel because I had a team originally that was going to go into Gaza and get these constituents out for Lindsey Graham, Markwayne Mullin, Mitch McConnell, and another one. Because we work very tightly with these senators when there's Americans stuck. And so we knew these individuals are going. So I go over there and I'm waiting for my team to come, and like everyone's getting denied entry. Like one of my guys couldn't get in there. And so then I'm sitting there hanging out in Israel by myself. And I'm like, I saw real quickly, I'm like, one, there was nonstop, like this is like a week after. So they're constantly just kind of rocket barrages coming in. So I go down to Eilat, and that's where the 3 missiles were intercepted. Those cruise missiles were coming in. And I'm like, this is supposed to be the area that never gets hit, and they're aiming for this thing. So I'm like, then I was going out to Beersheba, and they were getting hit. So I was like, there's really no good area, because I was trying to be on the border to see if like, hey, the gates, because it's more of like a logistical game of like, I got these people, I need to get them out. They're at the gate. Like, let me work this. And so there was nothing I could do in Israel. They had their thing going on. They were still dealing with all the aftermaths of October 7th. And so I had whispers from my source network, because I still have a very in-depth source network of individuals. I could usually call somebody in some place and know somebody. And so I got a mover shaker in Egypt. I got a mover shaker in Gaza. I had a mover and shaker in Israel, and kind of just all working this for it. And I had whispers that I could potentially, bribe the North Egypt border crossing, or not bribe, or work with somebody in the government and get it there. The Egyptian government was amazing for that. So problem is, people don't know this, like North Egypt, the North Sinai is a military restricted zone. Like no Americans are allowed up there. So that's like hurdle 1. So I have to then ditch all my gear in Israel. Luckily, my Israeli buddies, I gave all my plate carrier and everything else, night vision goggles, all these things, because we originally planned to go into Gaza. And I ditch all my gear. I then go by like buggy across the border and go through Egypt, get through, and pretty easy transition. They just stole my sat phone. Like they didn't steal it, but they took it. You're not allowed to have sat phones there. Get over to Cairo, and then I had to figure out how to get up to the border. I don't want to get in depth of how I did, but I got up to Al Arish. It was ISIS territory at one point. It's a pretty dangerous little area. And there's one hotel, and I'm like sitting in this border town, and all of a sudden, like, there's like 3 other Americans, and it's like State Department, TSA. They come around like, who the fuck are you? I was like sitting with some cat. I'm like, I don't know, who are you? Like, dude, I'm like, I ain't no trouble here, just hanging out. And what boiled down to was, Rafah was shut down, and the reason it was shut down is because there was a miscommunication, or so I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but there was a road that was supposed to be blown up, and we can't get our Americans out for this reason. It was a geopolitical thing that was going down between ambassadors and people. So I just went up to the road and took a video of the whole thing and sent it to the Senate. So then you put that in the hands of the Senate, all hell broke loose, and the gates wound up opening.
Like, because the road was
not broken, not blown up.
Oh, man.
But when you're not supposed to have Americans up there, or third-party Americans, I kind of blew the lid off of.
Why do you think that they were saying, like, what was their motive for that?
I don't want to say it was Egypt. I don't want to say. I don't want. Look, the Egyptian government, they were great people. I don't want to, go into any, because I want to go back to the country. You know what I mean. I'm not trying to
throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to keep it very political. All it was I was able to give evidence to said individuals to then give them the power to then cause hell. Next thing you know, the gate was open up. So then that was part of it. So during this whole period, that time, the other part is a logistical nightmare, because then I have running water, food, transportation to people all in the regions. All the Americans are there. So I have a full source network of people delivering food, and I have to then get them money into Gaza. So it's a full logistical thing of them paying them. And it just took years of if I didn't have my network from years ago, like, it was just took keeping those networks and calling people, and then they would put me in. It's like a good old boys network of like vetting and validating. So I had that, and then that's how I was able to get up there. That's how I was able to get people moved. So like, we wound up getting like Mother Teresa of Gaza out.
Oh,
like,
nice.
Yeah, we got like 60. I think it was like 60 Americans out. I was just talking to one yesterday.
Nice.
Like, talking to her whole family.
What were they doing in Gaza at the time?
They're American citizens that were they have family over there.
I see.
Yeah, exactly. So they're Palestinian Americans that are going over there. I focus only on blue passports, so you know what I mean. Like these are true-blooded Americans. Like if you were over there and stuck,
of course,
right? And yeah, so got them out, but we were also looking like, what if that gate doesn't open up? So there's the Philadelphia corridor, and that's where a lot of ICE or a lot of Hamas tunnels were going in for it. And so we had people trying to assess them, see where they were, if it was possible to use them. Is there boat extractions? I mean, you're looking at everything. And so what wound up happening is to get them out, you have Qatar working with Hamas. You have, because nobody wanted an American to die. Nobody wanted a foreigner to die because it looks bad for Qatar and Hamas if they kill an American. It looks bad if Israelis kill an American. It looks bad across the board. And it's Egyptian. So you had to go through this whole assessment and process basically to get those people blessed off and get them out. And so it's more of like, you know, I was hanging out just doing this logistical game, checking their passports, communicating, getting them food and water, just the bare necessities that they had. But this boils down to like, why did I get baptized? It's like there's more to the story that was going down. I was like, man, if we could pull this off, like God, like I'll get baptized. And because I had talked like 2 months prior I was finding my faith, like with Tim Tebow, I would always ask him for guidance and mentorship, and he would always give good guidance. And I said 2 months prior, back in July, I was like, man, if I ever got baptized, I would want to get baptized in the Jordan River. And so I'm over there, all this is happening, and I have this chaos moment where I'm like, this is not, everything's going south. And I was like, if you do, you know, give me a sign. And I'm sitting there in the Mediterranean Sea, like sitting there in the Med, 6 a.m., North Egypt border in Al Arish. And I was like, you just give me a sign. And the whole thing just went flat. Like the wave stopped.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, is this real? And I just start laughing, like uncontrollably laughing. Like, and I'm sitting like in a pond in the Mediterranean. Wow. I was like, the coincidences or odds or something. And then sure enough, the next day the Americans were released. Everything got out. You know, because I'm up there by myself and I'm trying to figure out all these plans. You have all the people back here that are chirping and saying all these things. And, you know, you have all this stress of what's going on. And so I flew to, after that, I had to go for a meeting in Jordan. And the National Prayer Breakfast that I'm really tight with, they called in because Bethany Beyond was shut down because of the whole crisis. They had somebody that opened it up, and I got like basically a private baptism at John the Baptist, like in the Jordan River.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I was like, man, this is, you know, I'll tell this story one day.
Yeah.
For it. And yeah, so I've just been practicing my faith and, you know, trying to be better every day and as best you can. But I knew that it kind of ties back to what you said of like your purpose. Yeah, I feel like some of us are picked and chosen to lead a way or live a life. And I never got baptized before because I was like, I lived years undercover. You know, like I was a savage back in the day with just being an idiot. And I'm like, I didn't realize that like basically a lot of the apostles, you know, we're not the best people. Right. You know, that's kind of why you live through that life to then go and then you tell your story after. So
yeah, that makes sense. It's you know, there's so many coincidences, you know, that we've had, and to me, it's just too many to not be real. I mean, now, interestingly, Warren had brought me a card. This is probably 8 months ago, 10 months ago, that had the Archangel Michael, like basically with his foot on the devil's neck. And I didn't even really know who Archangel Michael was. And I kind of heard about it, but I wasn't like familiar. And I was doing a podcast with this artist, and the artist was Arthur Quan Lee brought me a painting. And it was a painting of the card that Warren gave me 30 minutes before. I mean, I've got it up in there. I'll show you after the podcast.
Yeah, you got to show me, yeah.
I mean, it's just why. I mean, what are the odds of that? That's impossible.
Mathematically impossible.
Yeah, mathematically. I mean, I don't know who Archangel Michael is. Warren gives me this card. I'm like, oh, and Warren hasn't given me, you know, other, let's call it gifts before. So like, oh, thank you, Warren. It was very kind, you know, and had the prayer of Michael on the back, and it was nice. And 30 minutes later, Arthur brings in a painting of the exact same image on the card. And so, you know, to me, like my interpretation of that is God is protecting me. Archangel Michael is protecting me. And, you know, to have something like that happen, you know, that gives me a lot of strength in tough times. And I look at all the times where I've almost been killed. When I was 18, we had a home invasion, and one guy got shot in the head in the backyard of the house that I was staying at. He lived. And we were sitting at a party at my house, and these girls ran by. Oh, they have guns. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought they were just. And so I walk into the den, and my best friend Byron is getting pistol whipped, and the guy turns around at me and starts shooting at me. And you know, the next day, and they ran out, and I ran upstairs, and it was I went to get my gun, and they were gone by the time I was back downstairs. But there was a hole in the bullet door, or there was a hole in the door where the bullets had hit right at head height, and I was ducking as I was running by that door.
God.
So, I mean, that's, you know, one example of what I could say is many where I'm just like, I shouldn't be here.
You should, like, there's no way that guy misses. It's not a chance encounter, right? Like, shooting that many times, you're going through it. Statistically, you
10
should
feet
be
away.
dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Unless there was a plan and purpose for you.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, there's a lot of those. And so, yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of situations like that. You're just naming some that, you know, the water gets calm. You're, hey, God, can I get a sign? You know, and boom, that happens. And so, and I agree. I think that, you know, we've been through a lot, and as we're going through it, maybe we're not as close to God, or, you know, we're questioning different things. We're searching for the true meaning of life. And I feel like he's preparing us to be an even better person, because we can relate to the suffering and the issues that other people are going through.
Yeah. Like what did I say? So you don't take, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, man. Like you know, they say is like, I feel like you get multiple chances, you know, and I felt like I was getting my last chance to come to him.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think there was other indication. I knew that, like, I had to go this, like, he's been calling me to come to him, and I just wasn't taking the option.
Absolutely.
Eventually, I felt like this was, like, my last chance. Like, you come, or this is you're off.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's like, I've saved you, I've guided you, I gave to you, now come to me.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think we're fortunate. You know, I think we're very lucky. I think, you know, I don't think everybody is. Like, sometimes he's like, hey, you played your part in this life. And no, I think we have free will. I think we do. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, like, I think it's the Matrix example. When Neo's talking to the Oracle, and he's like, am I the one? She's like, no, you're not. And, well, you are, you aren't, right? Well, you technically are, but it's your choice to go that path in that way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you? You know, no, you're not. Not yet. You know, you're not yet. Are you on that path yet? You have the ability to fuck it up.
Yeah,
right? You have the
absolutely.
ability to mess it up and not be the one.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's one of those things. And I mean, it was crazy. I was always fearless when I was working around the world, like, to a fault, like, not giving a fuck. Like, I'm like, I'll be all right, or whatever. Like, it is what it is. If something was to happen while I'm doing this work, like, there's no greater deed than, like, I think laying down your life for rescuing a kid. Like, how I looked at it. But also, it was like, was like, whatever. Like, always in these moments, and then always, like, successful out of somewhere. Like, I would get a sign or indication. And you're going through these places, and you're like, man, there has to be somebody that's orchestrating this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody that's, like, giving me the chance to go down that way. Now, you have to take the free will and take that pathway. Sure. For now, like, I have never, I don't think, ever been as happy or as, I would say, content with life. Right? Where I'm like, okay, you know, like, if this bad thing happens, I got my faith to fall back on. It was supposed to be that way. You know what I mean? Like, could I have prevented it? I probably could have, but you know, it was supposed to happen. There was a lesson in it. Like, I've been blindsided, I've been stabbed in my back, and I'm like, if anything, it just made me a better person.
Yeah.
You know, like, when you have your faith to fall back on, like, I look back at my younger self that didn't have faith, that didn't have my Bible study, that didn't have the church. And I was like, man, I was lonely.
Yeah.
I was dark. I feel like the highs are higher and the lows are not as low when you have faith behind you.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's interesting once you're able to lean on God through prayer. And I mean, I can't even imagine, like, at this point, because some of the stuff that we do is so stressful. So many obstacles day to day don't have answers. Like, there's no clear answer. And I can't imagine going through it without, praying. And of course, it seems that we pray more when things are going bad. And I was actually reminding myself of that yesterday. I'm like, oh, this has been a good couple weeks, but I went from praying, 15 to 30 times a day like I do to, like 2. And I'm like, okay, but I feel like sometimes God's putting these difficult issues in place just for me to go to him, a reminder, hey, I'm here and I can fix this, and that's been my experience. He's always fixed things, and didn't understand him at the time. I mean, over the last 9 years being in Mexico, man, we've had to overcome so much. It's been very, very difficult.
Well, the amazing work you're doing in Mexico too. I mean, especially like all the cancer patients you've been dealing with and seeing death and them leaving off life. Like, I couldn't imagine if I was dying and I didn't have my faith.
Yes. Oh, exactly, man.
Right. Like,
absolutely. We've seen that a bunch, and it's heavy work. But the people really are amazing. You get to see the worst out of people and the best, mostly the best though, because as someone is really facing their death and they've been told they have, 3 months to live, you really get to see a lot of the beauty in life. And, we create a program where, the mind is very important. We have 2 full-time psychologists. We have Power of the Mind classes for the cancer patients, to where they can really release a lot of that out. A lot about even personal responsibility. Don't be a victim to your circumstance of cancer, but talk about it and be open about it. Clean up any of the past relationships that maybe you've damaged, because now it doesn't even matter. You're facing this, and you think that kind of anger or whatever you're feeling towards another person, or you feel like they're feeling towards you think it's worth it, or do you think it'd be better cleaning it up? And the weight that takes off of the cancer patient's struggle, that's a big part of our philosophy, is we want to clean up the emotional turmoil that they've carried for so long that they might not even realize it. And so, we focus on healing in that way too. And it's beautiful work, but it's, it has been tough. There's a lot of emotion with that over the years as well.
And you say, I think you see, and I think that one of the benefits I had with plant medicine was it made me comfortable with death. It showed me some things, and after studying ayahuasca and doing things, it really made me comfortable with death. And I think plant medicine was key for me to come to Christ. Right? I feel like they were all tied together. Like back in the day, they used to study plant medicine. There's a great book called Immortality Key that goes back and looks at alternative means of like religion and plant medicine and other things that are out there. And I think they're connected, right? Like I feel like they are. I feel like on my journey, at least, it brought me to it. And then you have to get into the Bible, and you have to get into the praying and the religion and everything like that. And so, it's like just being around as you go through death and chaos and things like that. Like if you don't have that religion, I mean, it has to be a hell of a lot harder.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you were an atheist for a while, but then you were turning for a while too. So you at least were praying, and you had that.
Well, I always wanted to get into it, but I would go into church service and I'm like, that's bullshit. I don't like that guy. I don't like man involved in my relationship. Now, I found a great church. I go to Cross Assembly in North Carolina, Raleigh. Like, they're phenomenal. Like, I finally found a pastor that I'm like, I really like this guy. They do a lot of mission work. Money goes back to the people. Like, I've really found, versus like the super churches, the mega churches, I just saw the corruption. Like, there's just so many nonprofits out there, churches and things like that. And so I always had a problem with that. And then I also had a problem with like my sinning. I always thought that like, I can't be that, I'm doing this, or I did that. You know what I mean?
How can God forgive me? How can he even want me?
I'm a dirtbag. Like I can't live these. I would think of like these guys are living these perfect Christian lives and they're doing that. I'm like, that's not me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm out there running around the world doing my thing. And I just was like, I can't be at this point in time. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to go through it. You know, I think it helped being an atheist at first because I would have all these arguments of why it isn't real. And now I have all the reasons why that's bullshit, right? Like, I go through, I'm like, God, Jesus can never walk on water. I'm like, we don't even know how the fucking pyramids were built.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like,
that's right.
You start making these arguments, you're like, I don't believe anything. I think Rogan said it best. He's like, you know, before COVID, he's like, I'm like, vaccines are good. He's like, after COVID, he's like, I don't know if we landed on the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You know, like that was one of the best one-line jokes I think I've ever heard Rogan come up with. And that really helped me put it in context because I started studying ancient civilizations and things like that. I'm like, we really don't understand this world.
Right.
Right? Like, how is Wim Hof able to lower his body temperature and kill a boga, or what do you have, a boga or something like that? But you have Ebola.
Yeah, Ebola.
He like killed that physically. How are these monks able to like heat their body up for it? I'm like, there's like, you have all these indications. The stuff in the Bible was talked about and I would say like, that's bullshit. There's no such thing, you know? And then if you actually start looking around the world, all these things really do exist.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think that, you know, the way science goes, and obviously I love science, but
same.
It makes you think outside of yourself with your brain. And it doesn't necessarily connect you with your deeper self and the functioning of your body and the connectiveness of us as human beings, the importance of human connection, animals, love, those type of things. I mean, how does science measure love? You can't measure it. So, you know, I think a lot of these other civilizations or other times, periods throughout humanity, people were able to tap into those things a lot more without just being told that it's bogus or it's not real or it's quackery or, you know, it's pseudoscience. And, you can see that through the psychedelic work that you've done, that there's something else out there. This isn't the world that we see every day living, not taking mushrooms.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the plant medicine was like the gatekeeper. Do I think plant medicine is for everybody? No, I don't know if there could be one plant medicine for you, but it depends on who you are. I think like an assessment should be done. And I think like, this is a good medicine plant that would work for you. That's what shaman would do. Yeah. You know, it wouldn't be Glenn go try every plant medicine. The shaman be like, you got this going on. Like, you should probably take this. Yeah. Right? Like, we don't have that process anymore. So people like the plant medicine world is crazy. Everyone's like, I'm going to go do ayahuasca. Yeah. Well, you have a split personality, probably not the best. Right. You know, like, probably not the best thing to go down there and do it. So I think that plant medicine opened my brain. Like, it really, there's neural pathways that were rewired. And then like I go through conditioning and I go with intentions and I am like, I really want to focus on this. And, you know, like I was going to church and I would go through it and then, you know, like I would have my own ceremony, right? Like in Colorado, you have different things you can do with the mushrooms and everything like that. So you have your own little ceremony on that day with that. And like, I felt like it made me even closer to God. Yeah. I could have those very honest conversations and look internally and call myself a piece of shit and call myself, you know, like that's what mushrooms do for me. It's very internal and like really killing the ego as much as you can. And I respect them. But yeah, I think it's critical to understand our history and the medicines that they used to use. And like Marcus Aurelius, like I found out recently from a Rogan podcast that LSD is ergot, like based out of ergot. I used to think LSD, I always put LSD as like a plant medicine because I was like, it feels like a spirit. Well, it turns out it comes from ergot.
What is that?
Ergot is a mushroom. Ergot is what they believe was used where Marcus Aurelius and Plato. I see. Yeah, I think it's Mount Lucius in Greece that they would go, and they always thought it was ergot. They haven't figured out exactly what it was, but it seems like it was a mushroom, and that would be what they would have or something along those lines. And I'm like, dude, that's because LSD, I think, is amazing. Yeah. It's amazing for relationships. You and your significant other, like that, if you made a facility somewhere and you had couples therapy and it was with LSD, I think divorce rate would plummet. You know, like the people would stay together because it's a way to connect with your partner.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there's a lot with the plant medicines or the psychedelics that are underutilized right now. I mean, they're going through FDA trials. I know MDMA was nearly approved last year. Or
It just
maybe
got
this
killed,
year.
didn't it?
Yeah, well, it was a few months ago, but I was reading the reasoning, and I think it will be approved one day. But they wanted some different type of data, so I thought it was actually pretty reasonable. They weren't saying we're never going to do this. They're like, hey, come back after you've done this.
Yes.
And because there could be a lot of pressure. If something goes wrong, then the FDA's sole job is to produce safe medications.
Yeah.
So that's there's a few other things. That's their main thing, is make sure it's safe. So I think that they want to make sure that it's 100%
I mean, I
safe.
think it's very, because it's a strong, for me, MDMA was like, they say it's a 2-day drug, right? It's a 2-day because you have such a drop the next day.
Oh yeah.
You go through it. So like those lows are harder for certain people.
Mm-hmm.
They were always hard for me. Like, so I never really messed with it that much at all when I was going through my journeys and everything like that. But yeah, it would just be amazing if one day they were like, all right, we're going to start clinics, and where they have these abilities to be able to use these medicines. Because I don't know, we've been down the pharmaceutical route.
Oh yeah.
Like I have the bag of pills that I got when I got medically retired. You would throw up.
Really?
Oh, dude, I like, just of all the stuff they had me go through, from, because I have like severe ADHD and dyslexia, so they gave me all the different types of amphetamines, which turn you like terrible for you.
Yep.
Then you have all like the antidepressants because your anxiety is super high because you have ADHD. So they're like trying all these different things. Then you had the painkillers they put me on, then the sleeping pills, and like I didn't know. I was like I'm lost my way with getting out of the military. They just flood you with all these things. You're like, oh, I'll try anything. You mean well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, actually, if you would have just took 5 grams of mushrooms and killed your ego, you probably would have been okay.
You probably would have been better.
Yeah.
How many of the issues that veterans have after they get out of the military do you think are caused by overprescribing of drugs?
Man, it's that's a whole other topic, because I've been working in that suicide prevention space now for a while with the Stop Soldier Suicide. The whole system is just flawed from the get-go. It's hard to get help, because if you get help, then you lose your clearance, and everybody has a clearance nowadays. And so then you try to get on these pills for it, which then those pills are proven to cause you to have psychotic episodes, right? It kills everything that you are as an alpha male or a fighter in the military getting after it. And then you're a guy that just doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that whole suicide side of it, the treatment for VA veterans. And yeah, it's a tough situation.
Well, you founded a company called Blackbox, right?
Yeah. So I founded a project at Stop Soldier Suicide. So during COVID, I wasn't going undercover anymore. I was just chilling in my house. And I got a call, like a random call from a CEO of a nonprofit called Stop Soldier Suicide. And I knew the board already, Nick and BK. They're great dudes that started an organization where it's basically they had wellness coordinators. So guy in crisis could have a third party, won't report back to your chain of command, and they would help facilitate you get the help that you need. So if you're lost your house or you're going through certain times, they could put you in help that you need and also talk you through things. It's not like the crisis line, like you have a gun to your head. It's going to be there to make sure you get sustainable treatment through it. So the CEO at the time just called me up. I was like, hey, I got your number from DC people. They said you might be able to help. And they wanted to use technology and to prevent suicide. Now, I liken this to like the Slumdog Millionaire movie, like a Slumdog Millionaire movie where it's like, I don't want to be a spoiler, but all these events had to happen to get this idea from it. And so, I have a background in digital forensics. I was teaching cybersecurity hacking for open source intelligence information. So I understood the security world, and then data science, where you kind of bring it together. I would start dabbling in data science with machine learning. And I realized real quickly, so I sat with the idea, and I've had 8 friends. I wrote my first eulogy when I was 21. 3 months after I got back, my best friend killed himself and fucking absolutely crushed me. I was in denial. I thought he was murdered, like everything. So it's always been close to my heart. Andrew Tomlin, great dude. So it's always like, I was like, oh man, passion project, COVID, not traveling. So I got my whiteboard out and I realized that I was helping guys financially. because I had got out, but still guys were struggling, and usually financial stress is a big indicator.
Yeah.
And so I would help a guy out here, help a guy out there, cover a bill, whatnot. And I would realize that they're on their Facebook page. You know what they were posting? Call a buddy, help a buddy. And I was like, your outward persona is not matching with your inward persona. I know you're the one that needs help. So I would see these posts. And then when I was doing digital forensics against pedophiles, it was like I could live your life. I could see everything you were doing. It's, Elon Musk says your cell phone is your fifth limb. And so I'm like, we have these. And then I knew security. I knew that with security that your phone is only locked out for so long, and then you'll be able to get in everybody. And I knew that everybody was leaving these phones behind. They cherish them. It's like their holy grail. So we call it the Blackbox Project. Nobody knew how a plane crashed until they put a black box in the plane and figure out how they were crashing. So I'm sitting on all these black boxes, basically. All these plane crashes that happens, the cell phone is that individual. So I could see the last second to last year of life to figure out what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and can we prevent and predict it in the future? And so I had to solve it to get the forensic solver. So I contacted Cellbrite, the CEO at Cellbrite. Like I had a warm intro from a buddy into the CEO, and he's like, dude, love the project, full suite, like hooked us up. Cellbrite has been amazing. We have like a government level suite of forensic software in North Carolina. I had it in my house at first, which is dope. I had like an old computer, an Alienware computer, like sitting in my closet, pulled out a monitor, set up this forensic lab during COVID. And I'm like, cool, I got everything set up. They're like, now you got to go get phones. And I'm like, what do you mean I got to go get phones? Like, that's your job.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you got to go get phones. I'm like, so then I scoured like Facebook from our social media groups that we had and started reaching out to these families. And like a few said no. And then a few were like, yeah, come and go in. And when I'd have dinner with them, and my God, like seeing the level of destruction from a child killing himself. And like, it's one of the big things that I've been working on is like the public service announcement. I feel like this isn't a stop soldier suicide statement. This is a Glenn statement. I feel like it needs to change. You have to show these families because there's a sign at the Golden State Bridge that said, you're only pushing the pain. You know what I mean? And so when a soldier veteran kills themselves, or significant other, all that does is take all the pain that you have and puts it directly on your loved ones. And so by doing that, and then, I'm super tight with these families. I was like 3 weeks ago, the Murga family in North Carolina, I was there, I was golfing with them at their memorial tournament for Austin Murga, amazing soldier. Bill Lee down in Florida, I went fishing trip with him. Like I've gotten close with like the first 5 because it's like you really got to know the Manor family. They gave their phones, and they were the critical piece toward this whole thing because at first, I met with the sergeant major of the Army. He's like, this is too intrusive. I'm like, they're dead. They're gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's after the first 5, it's all automated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's all automated. At that point forward, it's all automated. Once I build the pipes, then the data goes and you analyze the data at that point.
Yeah. So basically you're taking the metadata off of the cell phones of people that have soldiers that have committed suicides?
All the data.
All the data. Okay.
All outgoing text messages, all inward coming text messages,
I
all
see.
browser history, all emails, all appointments, calendars. So when I got all this data, we start seeing it, and like people are like, oh, spur of the moment, this guy died spur of the moment. I recovered a deleted suicide note 3 months prior. He wasn't.
Oh, wow.
I saw that, 3 out of the 5 that I had went to the VA that day for help and then killed themselves.
Wow.
I saw that they were, they're saying in the military, you either go to the Bible or to the bottle, right? And a lot of guys just abuse alcohol. And it's one of the worst things you can do if you're in a low because it will just take you low.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have that. That's the beginning part of the process. And then, I got a hold of Amazon, AWS. They loved the project. Wound up running a machine learning team at their ProServe. Their top machine learning analyst came on. And we started looking at the project, and sure enough, man, sleep deprivation, isolation, right? Anger, aggression. So we created our own sleep algorithm that we could see based when you're sleeping, based on when your phone connects, your Bluetooth, your gyro, everything, your frequency of text messaging, different things like that. And so we're now up to 67 devices. We've grown the project. But now, and this is not finalized, but I want to take the project open to everybody. I want to focus on suicide and then profile to maybe veterans, to police, to firefighters, to the blacks, the Asians, the whites, the Hispanic. You know what I mean? Like really start. So blow this project up because we need devices. I need 1,000+ devices to go through to then start seeing the correlation of data. And then once you have it, right, we can run an SDK we can give it to Facebook and say, hey, you have someone that's potentially going to suicide, reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Or other nonprofits out there, if you're working on in their clinical process, hey, maybe get a hold of them ASAP because they haven't slept in 2 days.
Yeah.
Right? Like the anonymous number ID. So there's hope. No innovation has happened in suicide.
Yeah.
None. Nothing until this project, but we're sitting on the holy grail of data. Like it's, we've been talking to some of the top universities, Vanderbilt University, great guys over there. We're going to start bringing some of the best researchers in now and to try to scale this project as best we can.
That's interesting. There's actually research right now on the blood work of, depressed patients. So it'd be interesting if you had like a little prick that you could do and tie it into the app data to see where they're at. At first, when I heard that was happening probably 7 years ago, I had a friend, immunologist that was working on it. I'm like, I don't think you're going to, but the data is actually pretty good.
The biomarkers, it's like if you can get there at the right time.
Yeah.
Like cortisol level spike. I'm sure he's probably monitoring something along this line. I don't know the science behind it.
I forget everything he was monitoring. It was.
I've seen a few studies around it.
Yeah. It was interesting, but I mean, what is the rate currently of U.S. military that are committing suicide? Yeah,
you're looking at, I think it's 6,000 a year. You have anywhere from 22 to 27 that kill themselves a year. For it, we've lost way more veterans to suicide.
22 to 27 a day, right?
Yeah, that's a day.
A day.
Yeah. I think it's 1/3 of the national average. Don't quote me on that one. For it, but it's like guys like me though. Like I've known like 2 guys in the past like year that have done it. Like it's so hard to get to them because it's like they're not going to sit down and talk to you. Like very rarely that they're not going to go to the VA and get help. They go through financial stress. I feel like they have that built, and then it's like, boom, at that moment. And so if we can get to them, that's like if we can get to them through the digital means of like, hey, bro, like you are going down this. Think of your family.
Right.
Think of this.
Yeah.
Think of that. There was a wellness coordinator that my buddy Austin that works over at Subversion who was telling me about it. She made them tape a picture of their son to his pistol. Right? I thought that was a fascinating way.
Yeah.
You have to be able to show that bond of like, this is who you're hurting. You're not hurting yourself. You're not giving yourself a break.
Yeah.
Right? If you're single, you have nobody in your life, got it, man. Like, dude, if I didn't have kids, this could be a whole different story. Right? I always had like, I was like, I'm going to have to suck this shit up.
Yeah.
I don't care how low I am. Like I've had the gun in my hand and I'm like, yep, that's not even a fucking option.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I have a 5-year-old. I at the time, like I have a ton of kids. I'm like, there's just too many people.
Yeah.
For it, but it's a tough fight. It was a lot harder like going to these households than I was expecting. I was like, man, it's very. I'm like, if the people in the world could see the carnage of what suicide does to families, it would be. People would think twice.
Oh, it's brutal. I mean, it's one of those, just a sinking feeling,
Because you're 1 hour away from it all being okay.
Yeah.
I think it's also due to a lack of religion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And lack of religion. Most of the time, I would guess it happens when people are drunk. The drunker they get,
and the next day afterwards.
Yeah, I had a friend yesterday. I got a call from his dad, and he's like, "Hey, I haven't talked to so-and-so this morning." And I'm like, I was with him the night before I flew in, and he was a little down, so went over to hang out with him and drive him. But I didn't get any signs that anything was going to happen. And so, yeah, his dad called, and so I rushed over there, and I had all those thoughts going through my head, like, oh, gosh. And Laura was with me, and I got there. I'm like, hey, you stay in the car because I didn't want if something happened. He opened the door. He just drank a lot and overslept. I was like, oh, thank God,
punch
man.
You right in the dick.
Yeah, I was like, he didn't do anything.
Answer yourself.
He didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, he slept. But I mean, so just yesterday I was having those thoughts of, it's like a reminder of how bad this is going to be if this just happened. And, having a little guilt. Like I was thinking last night, did I miss something? He was kind of down. I said this to him. Maybe that was harsh.
Yeah.
He's going through some things. So I was giving him some, friendly advice.
Yeah.
Maybe I went a little too hard on. Yeah. But,
you shouldn't do cocaine. It's
right,
not good.
Right.
Like
you shouldn't do X, Y, Z. You got to stop seeing this. It was basically over a woman.
Yeah.
That, he broke up and they've been 5 months, but they'll get back for a couple weeks and then, stuff like that. And, but yeah.
Honest truth is needed. You know what I mean? It's
absolutely.
Like the brotherly trust.
But, now if he would have done that though, and, I could have had this regret, maybe the rest of my life of what I didn't say or what I missed or those type of things. And so it really is. And his dad, I called his dad as soon as I left, and his dad, answered, started crying, I told him it's fine. And so people don't think about the impact it has on their family and friends, the person that discovers them, the people that, the mom or dad that's losing their child, the child that's losing their father or mother, a lot of these different things. And, I think the more people are reminded of that, the less chance they have of actually doing it.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I think there's two ways you look at it. You look at the family, but also if you travel. Like, there's a whole story, and it's kind of funny. Like, the guy that flew to Colombia, did a whole bunch of coke and had a bunch of hookers, and then he didn't kill himself.
Huh.
You ever heard that story?
Then he killed himself?
He didn't want it. He was going to kill himself. But he's like, I'm going to go out, and he's going to go down. He did all that, and he's like, actually, life's not that bad. You're right. Like, but I'm not condoning to do that. What I'm saying is like, for me, like, if you go, like, you don't hear about suicide in Africa. You don't hear about suicide in these refugee camps. Like, they are very lucky to be alive. So sometimes it just takes moving the environment.
Yeah.
Right. Like, going to that different environment and seeing what people are going through and be like, I got it pretty good. Like, if you can, sometimes it just takes to put things into context for it. And like you said, they're like 1 hour, 1 day away from like being okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, take a sleeping pill, sleep it off, man. Like, it's sleep for 2 days, 3 days. We've all had those where we're like, the waves are just beating us.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think life's is about like, it's not like I'm not going to have another low. Not like I'm not going to get like completely submerged and drown. It's just, I just got to hold my breath.
Yeah. And
try to just get back up. I know. Like, I've had some really tough mentally years where I'm like, this is fucking like ever ending.
Yeah.
Like, could this just be like thanks to you. I mean, honestly, man, like, I was probably at my lowest point when we first met, like with my neck. I mean, I had an injury for like 18 months. I couldn't sleep. They put me on like tramadol. Like, and I didn't want to take pain because I was hooked before, but it was like, I was losing my tricep because of muscle atrophy before I went down to CPI. Like, I was messed up, like, mentally, because my physical feature, I couldn't do anything without pain.
Yeah.
But it's like, luckily, I mean, obviously you guys gave my life back by going down there. I got my C6, my rotator. You guys have fixed everything. And once you get that fixed, then you're good.
Yeah.
Like, I look back in those moments of like how low and like I felt fat and I felt like out of shape and all these things. And I'm like, just had to weather the storm, and then that you're going to get out of it. Yeah.
I mean, the injuries are something. That chronic pain is a whole other thing too.
Yeah.
That is, people don't realize how much pain certain people are going through.
Yeah.
And it's an everyday thing. You have something wrong with your neck, C6, C7. What was yours?
C6.
Yeah, C6. You got, atrophy happening, so you're losing muscle. It's a constant, like a pick almost. I had C6, C7 too back 20 years ago from fighting. And it was the worst, man. I re-injured it 3 times in 12 months. Each time was right when I was coming back. So I'd given it time. First training session.
Done.
I mean, and the pain it's indescribable.
Yeah.
And, but the chronic part of that, a lot of people have, this back pain or this neck pain that's day in and day out. And if you can't take that pain away, you might question, is it worth living? Because you're living with this horrible pain.
Yeah, man. Like, I 100% agree. Like, you guys are doing some black magic down there. Like, honestly, like, this isn't because we're friends. We became friends from this whole process, but I mean, I went to some of the best neurosurgeons because I wasn't sure it was neck, ortho surgeons, and they were going to do a full disc replacement. And if I didn't come to your place for that fundraiser for Operation Light Shine, I was like 3 or 4 weeks away from neck surgery, you know, which is maybe a 5-year, if it's successful. From that, I'm still running, you know, my nonprofit, my other companies. Like, my life's a whole different story.
Yeah.
And like you and Sky were like, hey, we're going to take care of you. And I think I was one of the first kind of miracle of hope dudes, you know, where you're like, hey, just come down there. And I postponed my surgery. I canceled it. I flew down there and I'm like, I'll try anything at this point. And like, when I woke up, you know, you always say, you're like, just wait, it's going to take time. I'm like, bro, I can feel on my fingers. Yeah. I'm like, I know it's going to take time, but I'm like, my muscle is like not flexing. Like my muscle is deteriorating from the atrophy. I'm like, you have to understand, like, I haven't felt my hands in almost 2 years. Yeah, man. Like, this is crazy. And so, and then it was like going through the process and going through, I'm like, this is actually, you start giving me hope again. And then it turns out then I had, during that whole period of like 6 months, I had a torn rotator the whole time, but it was causing the same pain. So I went back down to CPI. They injected that. And I swear to you, the day before I left for that Gaza operations, all my pain went away.
Oh, awesome.
It was like, it couldn't have been more serendipitous, like to the T, perfect. And I just did like 600 miles for the next 16 weeks, all through all these countries, driving around these cars. And I'm like, if that wasn't the most perfect timing, I don't know what is. And so, I mean, if you were allowed to do kids down there, I would take them. I have a nephew with a torn shoulder right now, and I'm like, God, I wish I could just take him down there and get the surgery. I'm like, don't cut him. Let him heal, and then we'll take him down when he's old enough. Or like my parents, like, I'm like, nobody should ever do surgery. I play a bunch of pickleball now. Like, people are injured all the time. Like, I'm always like CPI. Like, yeah, I'm like,
I mean, the thing is, sometimes surgery is necessary.
Needed,
but I mean, my opinion is you should always try stem cells
first
before surgery, because I mean, there's some weeks, because, you know, we have returning patients come back at month 6 and 12. We allow them to get 30 million free stem cells, and we do their MRIs because we're collecting all this data.
Yeah.
And some weeks, man, it's 15 out of 15. And I don't say that, like, I was skeptical initially with stem cells. I wanted to see, you know, but some weeks it's 15 out of 15. The paper that we're looking to publish here pretty soon, hopefully we'll have it by the end of the year. I think it's going to be, and this is going to be lumbar, but 70 to 85% are getting significantly better. And we have different rankings, different scores. And so it's unbelievable. I mean, it's wild, and it does work in those. I mean, there is so even let's say it's 75%. Let's just kind of meet in the middle there. That would still mean 25 out of 100 didn't get better. But that still means 75.
Also margin of error, though. Like, were they drinking? Were they killing their stem cells? Were they doing things they weren't supposed to do, moving things? You know, like, what's that margin of error in that of the 25%, right?
Yeah, most of them were. They got back too soon and jacked themselves up. One was like playing football. The other was, you know, but so it does mess up
your statistics. Yeah, that's all. It has to be even higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's very high.
Yeah,
it's very high.
Exactly.
And it's so high that, true story, we have data from about, I don't know, I think we're probably close to, and this is with 6-month data of about 1,000, about 1,200 patients where they've come back. And I want to just publish the whole thing. But the data is so good that if we were to publish it, nobody would believe us. The mainstream would be like, that's impossible. It might hurt us more than help us. So we're trying to look at doing it in a way that we can show it convincingly. And so, but that's why I just want to do an all back study, you know, cervical, lumbar, like this lumbar study that we're going to be publishing. You know, we had to cut out those that had more than a certain amount of injections, or if someone got, you know, injections in their shoulders, this is just lumbar. And it's like, yeah, but most of our patients are doing, you know, lumbar, everything, neck, shoulder. So we had to exclude all of those out of there too. So it made a smaller group, but, you know, that is kind of what you publish. So you publish a paper with 1,000 patients, and, 75 to 80% of those patients are getting better, they're like, what is this? It's
You're like,
highly,
you cheated on the exam. Like, you got a perfect SAT score. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
That's a thought. And, but you've seen it.
I tell people, I'm like, I am not lying. They ain't paying me. I'm telling you, I go down, I'm like, eject everything. Yeah. I'm like, I would move to TJ. Yeah. If they could do that, like in North Carolina weekly, I would pay for it if I could afford it weekly, because you're growing. Didn't you guys grow a thumb back?
A good part of one. Yeah. I mean, so, I always say, full disclaimer, as a child, for instance, if you were to cut off like the tip of your thumb, you have a lot of stem cells at the tips of your fingers and stuff. It'll grow some of it back. But our thought was, this is more than the tip, and this is a grown man, and he was coming down for getting his neck injected, and he's a friend of mine, and he was flying in on a Sunday. Saturday, he caught his thumb in the bike chain and cut off part of his thumb. And so when he got there, he was coming down for stem cells anyway. We're like, hey, let's try injecting your thumb to see if we can grow it back.
Yeah.
And I'll be damned. That thing, it grew most of it back. He's got a little fingernail now.
It's going to be a little smaller.
Yeah,
it's going to be a little
small, but I mean, it was impressive. And it happened fast too.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 weeks later, man, I mean, he already had, you could see that it was going to be a lot better than he initially thought.
Oh, yeah, it's just a bone sitting there. Yeah, Lois sent me the picture. I was like, that is insane, man. I know now when I go back for my checkups, they're like, they scan like everything. Oh, your lumbar, we could probably do that. I'm like, hey, I will take whatever you want to give me right now. Like, I've been playing like pickleball like crazy. And so I'm like, could you check my elbow? It's getting kind of tender. They injected it. I'm like, this is phenomenal. Elbow doesn't hurt anymore.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like huge believer. I'm like, and I get hit up all the time because like I think one of the advertisements, and so like people hit me up and I'm like, dude, go down. Awesome. Like, it doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna have a major surgery, opt this.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
you gotta
obviously
try this
rest
first, man.
Yeah,
and it's like, they gotta try. If you have a neck or back problem,
back, shoulders, knees, like all your
actually, yes. Yeah, you know
what I mean? Like, if you have any of those range of moments where you're gonna lose your like, because if I look back 2 years ago where I was, I think my wife would be the best testimony, and I think she's gonna do a testimony. She saw like the difference before and after. Where my kids, they're like, dude, daddy can play sports, daddy can do this. You know what I mean? Like, you're going out and like you get your life back. It's crazy. I just wish we could do it in the U.S., man.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be able to start some FDA trials here in the next year or so. And I mean, we already have so much data. We're just putting it together in a way that we got to make sure that it's clean and we've gone through it, and we can present it and defend it.
Yeah,
because it's so unbelievable. I mean, it's just
it's like crazy.
It's unbelievable. What have you learned from the black box research that surprised you in the last days of some of these people?
The biggest thing is they were all, a lot of them wanted to get help, right? When you can see a flaw in the system where, they had their clearance and they're trying to communicate and go to like a third party, but then somebody found out that they were going to get help. And because of that, they thought like their career was over, and they thought like they thought so far along that in reality it didn't matter. It was really not a real significant event that they made a significant event. I think it's just going back through it. I think that's one of the biggest things is just help is there. Like, how do you get the help? How do you just really weather the storm to come through it? And really the fact that like these guys are going to the VA and then turning it away. Like, everyone talks about the VA being messed up, and I'm not hating on the VA. I'm just talking about some of the data points that I've seen. If they're going to get it, now we have the data to show that they're going to get it. So as we keep collecting this data and it keeps growing, we're at a very small sample set. If we have 1,000 of phones and we're seeing that 800 out of the 1,000 went to the VA that day, that's a pretty significant that we need to go change policy.
Yeah.
Right? Do I know that we're going to have 100% the holy grail and we're going to solve suicide? I don't. Do I think we have the best chance? We do. Currently. And so with that, we're just going to keep finding. People always say, well, what are you going to do once you get the information? I'll worry about that, and I'll stop the planes from crashing once I know how the planes are crashing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. it's definitely a problem when you hear 22 to 27 people every day, soldiers every day are committing suicide. You can't hear those numbers and not want to do something, you know?
It's access to guns too, right? Like a lot of them, we learn how to shoot. We have access to guns. Some spur of the moment happens, and you just pull the trigger.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, like if you know a guy is down on his luck, like then there's the gray, like, can you take their guns? No, you can't, because then you're violating their rights and they're going to make them even more suicidal. So there's just like this whole chicken with the egg thing that you're like, I don't even address the gun issue because it's like, you're not going to go through that, nor am I saying to take their guns away. But if I had a brother that lived with me or a son that was with me that I knew was on the verge, I'm going to make sure that he can't get access to it.
Yeah.
Right? Or a daughter, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to make sure that even though my house is that, I'm going to change the codes, I'm going to put them away and make sure that they can't get access that easy.
I think like so many things in politics, the gun issue is polarizing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you and I would be considered very, very strong Second Amendment people.
Absolutely.
But it's gotten to a point where if you have a conversation of anything but completely let people have their guns, you know, you're against the Second Amendment and you're bad. And, you know, I don't believe that. I think that we can have logical conversations about how to lower the risk for some of these people without violating the Second Amendment right, which to me is probably our most important right, because it's the right to stand up against a tyrannical government. That's the point that we have the Second Amendment. And I know that, and I believe in that, but we've lost, like so many things, logic in the Second Amendment debate, because people immediately just go the other direction and say, oh, you're trying to take our guns, blah, 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 blah. And then you got the left that really are trying to take the guns.
So they could use this as we
exactly
to use it to take away to take away the guns. Because if you give an inch, they'll take a mile on us and then go through. It's like, versus reality, I think all ideas should only rent space in your head.
Right.
Right? Like, you should be able to budge some and move some, but I think it's because our political system is flawed. You know, right now we have the left or we have the right. And our founding fathers stated a two-party system is the demise of democracy as it exists. After Ross Perot, they killed the Green Party because he threw the vote. The left and right got together and they polarized us like crazy. And so this is the problem when you don't have a third vote.
Right.
And so you cannot come on, you can't have that swing vote. And we could have the right and the center saying, hey, we need to address this, but you're only going to address it this far. And then you have power. Right, you have that, but right now it's like, man, you give that other side a little bit, they're gonna run with it, they're gonna twist it, they're gonna lie on the media because the left has the media, the right has Twitter. At this point in time, like, thank God to Elon Musk, he saved our First Amendment.
Yeah,
because of the way we were going censored, and you know, with our Second Amendment, they can only get so crazy. Yeah, we have more guns than we have people.
Yeah,
it can only get so crazy, right? Then they're not gonna stop trying to take our guns,
right?
Which unfortunately, but like you said, like I think we both can agree that we could budge a little bit, but we're so afraid if we budge, you know, next thing you know, then it's like, hey, then you need an ID, like prove that you're not suicidal.
Right.
Prove that you haven't had that. Now, oh wait, you were in the service, you most likely have PTSD, you can't own a rifle.
Right.
Right? Like you have all these like things that you know they're gonna fuck us with.
Yeah.
Like you're like, all right, whatever. Well, I'm not even addressing that topic because I know where this goes. And
how
like,
crazy is it though? Because I mean, what you're talking about, I feel the same way. It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
I have all the same concerns, and yet we know we should be able to talk about these things. But you have bad actors on the other side, and well, let's just say bad actors within the government. I mean, that's ultimately the group that we should most fear. They have the most power over all of us, and if we do give them an inch, it does seem like, you know, that's the last thing standing in the way of complete tyranny.
Yeah, we need term limits.
Yeah.
There's these like people talk about presidential. They do have power and they do abuse their executive power. And I'm hoping we have a new administration going into it because we're in a worse situation we're in. But at the end of the day, we need term limits and we need a third party back. Like, how was RFK Jr. not allowed to run on the party thing? Like, completely screwed. Bernie Sanders was screwed by the left there. Like, they're just picking their candidate.
That's exactly
There's
what
not
they're
even a
doing.
free election on the left right now.
No.
right? And then, like I'm a big Trump supporter. Like I don't care. Like I think he loves our country.
Yeah.
I really do. Like does some of the shit he say piss off people? It sure as hell does, right? Like they're going to do that, but he has great policies. I always say is like, we had the Abrams Accord. We had peace in the Middle East. We had a complete opposite of what we have right now and chaos around the world. We have a great economy. Like I would say, I've tried with people. I'm like, give me a reason what policy that you're seeing right now on the left is a good policy for my children's future.
Yeah.
Give me one policy
they
that
can't.
you're like, that was a really good idea. And they'll be like, Trump 2025 agenda. Like he's already come out and said, you can't use clickbait. He's already, fact checked and said we're not using.
Yeah.
We already debunked that. Like he said he cares for abortion. He says like, hey, when they have a heartbeat and they can actually, know what's going on, we can't kill them. Like that's the only thing. If raped, if you're doing like this, you have the right to abortion. I feel like that's a pretty sensible way to be, Like I've seen the videos of what it looks like when a 9-month-old is aborted.
Yeah.
That is murder of a child.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like I'm a very central person. I grew up, my dad and everything, we were the old school Democrats. Now we're, the Republicans. And it's like, we're the MAGA. That's like the side where I think like there's actual sense in being. But it's the media. Like it's the media and the politics you go through, which is crazy because if you go to any international airport around the world, everyone thinks Trump's this like maniac and crazy because they're getting Yahoo and they're getting CNN.
Yeah.
Like I think Soros just bought like 220 radio stations around the world. You don't think that is going to be propaganda that's put out there?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so obvious too. And you're talking about, what policies does Kamala have on the left? She's done what, 2 or 3 interviews. One was with Dana Bash. That was a complete softball, bullshit questions.
That's acting. That's not an interview.
Exactly. They weren't pushing her at all.
Yeah.
It was interesting if you were to watch that interview with Dana Bash and Kamala, and then you were to watch JD Vance and Dana Bash. She's fact checking. She's pushing. She's arguing. It's like the bias is obvious out there. I mean, you can see what these people are doing. You could see it in the debate when she was lying out of her teeth, but they didn't fact check her once. It was a lie. I thought she did a great job as far as, her versus Trump in that debate. She looked better. She sounded better. Then you come to find out, the camera angles on her were better.
Sorority sister was giving the questions.
So I didn't know that one.
That's the sorority sister was giving the questions during the debate.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy, right? Sorority sister, she had the questions beforehand.
Yeah.
She had questions she couldn't.
I know that's there was a document that was sent, basically saying, whistleblower document saying that she had the questions. We'll see. I want to see if that is true. If that is true, if it turns out that is 100% true.
That was going to happen.
I mean, but that would show you the stupidity of the American people. If they're okay with ABC giving one of the presidential candidates the questions beforehand, if they're okay with ABC agreeing not to ask about her time as AG of California and how many black people she kept in prison and the person on death row that she tried to keep on death row and all of the horrible things that she did, if they in fact agreed to not ask those questions and then to also fact check Trump, one of their fact checks was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, and people don't care, then we deserve what we get.
Look at January 6th. That was the best example, best thing they could have done, right? Like if you look at that situation, they are still going after people. So the way this worked was FBI and the people at the top in DC were going out to these locals. So they would contact my Fed friends in all these different states. And it wasn't the local feds that were contacting them. They would come from DC and arrest these individuals from it. They've created such a fear that people, they did it on purpose so they wouldn't stand up. So we know the debate was bullshit. We know that voter fraud was happening. We know that some of these things are getting overturned, but it's so what? Because when it's after the fact, they're not going to do anything.
Well, the whole insurrection thing is so stupid. Do you not think if Trump wanted to do an actual insurrection that he wouldn't have done it there? Do you not think that those people wouldn't have been armed going into the Capitol? When's the last time there's been an insurrection without weapons? Give me a break. I mean, it wasn't an insurrection. Did you have a mob of people? Yeah. just like the left has mobs of people going in and destroying cities, especially in 2020 over the George Floyd stuff.
We just, the Capitol Police didn't open up these doors.
Right.
And let them in.
Yeah. Well, they did on some, and then, there were some people that were breaking down doors. The point is, was it a mob of some crazy people? Absolutely.
But how many Antifa were in that crowd?
Yeah. Well, that's, we don't know that.
How many FBI? The guy that was in charge of it, that was actually an FBI informant, right? Like,
yeah, we don't, we don't know how many.
And we'll never know.
But it's still, even if they were, it still wasn't an insurrection. Yeah. I mean, how are you Trump could have said, I want you to storm the Capitol with guns, go give them hell, let's take back our country, and that would have been an insurrection.
Yep.
Not march peacefully, be peaceful, whatever exactly he said, which he did say those things as far as he wanted a peaceful protest. And yet they've played it into one of the darkest days in American history.
Pearl Harbor, 9/11,
give
all
me
this
a break.
Boo bullshit.
Boo-hoo.
But if you look at all of this, like the Russian conclusion, it wound up being the Democrats.
Yeah.
The Steele document, dossier was that was created by them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like people, we have all these facts. It's like, so what? They literally are like this. They're the bully in the yard, and what are you going to do about it? Oh, you're going to talk up? We're going to shut you down. We're going to shut all your accounts. We're going to take your bank accounts, right? Like, go up and say anything. They will take you off the platform. If you rise high enough, they will clip you. The tallest poppy on the right gets cut.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, if you look, thank God for Elon Musk and taking Twitter. People
Elon
are
Musk,
it's a terrible investment. No, he's a genius.
Yeah.
He knew that he had no way and he was going to get censored.
Yeah.
Right? He knew that he was going to. They took Donald Trump off of Twitter, but they kept the leader of Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And the Iranian that's killed Americans, the Iranian supreme leader that was allowed to be up there and steal his hate speech. You had pedophilia all over Twitter, but Donald Trump was not allowed to be on Twitter.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
If that doesn't tell you something, I mean, it's obvious what they're doing.
Oh,
I mean, it's very, very obvious. And the left right now, I've lost a lot of respect for many people on the left because they're just not consistent. And they're full of shit when they suggest that January 6th was a violent insurrection. Violence. You've been to war. What was that?
Dude,
an insurrection?
Was that the biggest setup? I mean, there were so many Antifa in there. It was a playbook. They called for a National Guard. They denied it.
Yeah.
If you look at when Biden gives a speech, they have more gates around that on purpose. They let it happen. That is a tactic in the intelligence world where you let it happen so the repercussions are 10x of what it is. You create fear and control through fear. It's a playbook for it. I think the problem is, luckily we still have a Second Amendment. And I think the problem is when you get the people that are standing idle, the individuals that serve this country, and other people, when they really start getting in, you're gonna have an issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think we do have, I worked with presidential campaigns down in Colombia. They have to show their ID.
Yeah.
Right? I think we really need to see it. Vegas had Trump winning, and all of a sudden we have a spike in votes where it's mathematically impossible one candidate can get all the votes. You have to understand, you have that the machines are unhackable, but then we find out 3 years later that actually you could manipulate the machines. But you have all these things. It's all there. Eventually, though, it gets to a breaking point. You have a pendulum swing. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid it's going to, because I'm a very peaceful guy. I'm a peacemaker in this world. I don't want to ever see violence. But you're going to push people all the way to the fucking far right or far left, and that thing's going to come swinging back.
Yeah.
And you're not going to like it. They're not going to like it if it gets to a point where people feel that, truthfully, I'm at the point where I can stand up and say something.
Well, and that's where I think they're pushing people there intentionally, though, because they know that we're the
who grows their food, who delivers their food, trains, trucks, food supply chain. They're going to look what happened in Canada when we had a few truckers. If you had some truckers and you had some individuals that cut off New York and cut off DC, within 3 days, they would have it. And it has to pull it down to term limits. I don't ever want to see that because at the end of the day, there's innocents that are going to do it. But people are going to stand up. They're going to rise up eventually. It's just the conditions aren't as bad. Yeah, I mean, I think when the conditions get worse, if we went into a full recession, if we went into a Great Depression, you know, the rate were just dropped, which is a huge indication that you're potentially going into a major recession or a Great Depression.
Yeah.
Like I think that is the only time that you'll get somebody up there because people are just comfortable enough not to really stand up.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like all of this is by design, and they've had a long-term plan.
It's by China.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Look at Walls.
Could be.
How many times did the vice president Walls or whatever potential vice president would come out? I was like, how many times has he been to China?
Yeah, I don't know.
You should look. I would challenge everyone. You look up his China connections.
Really?
Oh, dude, he's been there. I don't know. It was like 30 times. Like he's gotten awards over there. He talked about how great nation they are over there. Like, if you don't think China was on the ropes during Trump,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to. You don't think that they are funding our campaigns? Have you ever seen James O'Keefe's where he went around looking at the donor dollars and he would go like, "Hey, you donated $150,000 to the Democratic Party," and you go through and it's some old lady that doesn't have $80,000 to her name.
Yeah.
She's like, "No, I gave $20,000 one time."
Mhm.
So they're inflating the books and all these numbers. Like they have all these numbers, but the problem is you go through it and guess what happens? It gets out there and then it gets deleted.
Yeah.
And it gets demonetized to the algorithm so you can get out there. But I think what Elon's doing is smart, right? You have X, right? You have Starlink, right? And then he has a monopoly on the whole thing.
Yeah.
He is the and I'm not a huge fan. I'm a fanboy, but also it's like I see what he's doing. You can see the writing on the wall of like he sees the issues. He sees it like you cannot have a revolution without communication.
Right.
The first thing if you look at controlling countries like China, the first thing they do.
Yeah.
Control the communication, the internet, the Great Wall, right? Venezuela, China, like all of them, like they own that area of communication because you can't rise up, you can't organize, you can't come together if I can't communicate out to people. So I think Starlink will play that piece like down in Brazil. We're going to be able to, I think in the future, just be able to not need the dish, but just to satellite connect from our phones.
Yep.
And then you have free reign to communicate without being censored.
Nice.
It's going to be the true.
Yeah, I mean, I think of a world without Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, and it would be totally different. Those two single-handedly are, saving us from where we would already be under complete control and censorship, and people violating our First Amendment constantly. And that's where it's going. I like what RFK says, where he's like, "When's the last time you heard the people that were trying to censor were the good guys?"
That was great quote.
I mean, that's what it is, though.
Yeah.
When are the ones trying to censor the good guys?
If you think 100% of the victors in history were the good guys,
right,
is the other quote.
Yeah.
You think the guys who wrote the history books, all of them were good people?
Right.
There's not a fucking chance in hell, right? Like,
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And then you can go down the rabbit holes of, our country and the horrible things that the deep state has done over the last 70 years, really since World War II. I mean, CIA got really strong at that point. They, with look at MK Ultra, Operation Paperclip.
Dude, Patton got killed after World War II.
Yeah,
because he was against the Russians.
There's another one. I mean, JFK, RFK. And so we have all of these things that are really scars on our country. The vision and the belief in America is still there for me, but I see how the government, when it got too much power, it abused the people and it abused our rights. And now all that's coming out, and I think that the deep state, that's in control of everything is worried because they've got somebody like Trump who is ready to crash the system.
Dude, there's assassination attempts. Like, you couldn't pay a whole organization, all the people I know, to be able to pull that off without inside knowledge.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think the assassination tip was an inside job?
There is no doubt. There's no look at the last one. Okay, golf course. All right, so if you were to pay me to try to do this said job, knowing his logistical plan of when he's going to be there for it, right? Because you can't build a pattern of time over distance. They'll be able to identify you there. then also have that one area to be able to sit somewhere for 12 hours where it's overcovered without doing scouting and recon. Like, so it would take me a team of maybe 8 guys where one day one guy is going to go, another day another guy is going to go.
But let's just say he knew Trump was likely to play golf. We waited 12 hours. That doesn't seem that unreasonable.
It's like with the president, you have no idea when he's going to be at that golf course.
Yeah.
Like the odds of them knowing, somebody told him at some point in time, he's going to be here on this day, go do this. Why did the DOJ just release a picture of that whole thing about $150,000 yesterday?
Because they want him dead.
Right? Look at the first one. Like the first one, we all agree, like he has a rangefinder. You have people on the ground yelling. You have Secret Service are in that window. They're going through. And like that was the most basic.
They had some
like,
guy on a ladder.
Where's somebody going to kill Trump from? I don't know. That rooftop
150
right
yards away.
Yeah, that sniper tower right there. Yeah. And then like the 2 snipers that like there's multiple guns because someone shot from the side. I mean, come on, man. Like there's no, he was supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
Like I fully believe God turned his head at the last second to look at that screen and saved his life.
Yeah.
And that was the first rally that CNN recorded?
I didn't know that.
It was the first rally that they recorded. Why was it the GoPros that he had for the golf course? And I think Time Magazine put, there's so many cryptic little things that are out there. And, you know, obviously we're looking at just the pure facts here. I mean, this is like a young kid. And then if you look at his house is completely scrubbed. Like if this DNA kit, like team went in there and completely scrubbed the kit. Like I'm very intimate with like intelligence operations and how they go if they were going to assassinate or kill somebody.
Yeah.
That house is clean with like all DNA. He had no silverware.
Didn't you say there was somebody coming in and out of the house?
Yeah. So there's a thing called ad tech, and we've been using ad tech for years. I don't want to get into classified side of it because I'm not sure what is still classified, what is not classified for it. But it's if you look up ad tech, fog data, different indications, like we all have ads on our phones and they're free. Like Grindr was notorious. Grindr sold everybody's ad ID. For it, and so you could see these individuals were all these people that own Grindr and all these things back in the day. And so I don't have the data, hard for me to verify, but I can tell you that somebody posted it that had the data and said that somebody that went to individuals said house, the first shooters, was also going right next door to headquarters elements in DC.
What's the headquarters elements?
I don't know if it was the FBI, government building facility. Somebody went 9 times to that location.
Wow.
Right. So if I could get that data, I could verify it. It's expensive. I've been trying to get my hands on it. If anyone has the data, I would love it. I've analyzed that data for years. I know how to use it. You can see it. I've also been trying to get the ad data for Epstein Island, right? Like all this data is out there. And then you can see who's going and where it's going and who's been to these certain locations for it. Yeah. You know, it doesn't give you the name of said person.
Sure, just
it's an ID though. But then if he went to this house, I can see he works here. I can see that he went here. I can see he went there.
You could figure out who it is though. You could figure out who it is after, you know,
it's not hard.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not hard at all.
I mean, my thing is the July 13th assassination attempt. It was obvious that it was an inside job.
Yeah.
This latest one as well, you have to wonder how this type of thing happens within 7 weeks of the previous attempt. And I've been saying for the last few years, they're going to try to get rid of him somehow. And if they can't put him in jail, they're going to try to assassinate him. And now this is complete conspiracy theory, but what do you think the odds are that in March of 2020, in the middle of probably the most contentious presidential campaign of all time, a virus gets released into public that shuts down everything, and Trump's economy, which was amazing, the country was doing better than ever, gets shut down, and they have a reason for people to not like him because of how he handled the COVID issue. What are the odds of that? So I think that was a setup. I think that
it's manufactured in China.
The last two, it was manufactured at the Wuhan lab in China. They try to suggest that if you said it wasn't from a bat and a penguin, you were somehow racist, right? So they made people believe that, and they got the crazy people on the left say, oh, you're a racist. It's not from, disinformation. You're not trusting science. And they did that with masks. They did that with the vaccines. They did it over and over again. And than the last 2 assassination attempts. I don't think he's going to make it to the election. I think they're going to assassinate him, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you would take Eric Prince's advice and hire private. It's not the lack of the Secret Service. It's just the reach of these other individuals, right? I mean, they're gonna. I mean, just 2 attempts. This last one. I mean, he had ties with Ukraine. All the shit he was doing. He has a follower from the CIA, former CIA connection. She has a private account. He has a private account, but they follow each other. And what's on her LinkedIn? Is she CIA? Like, you know what I mean? I'm not talking shit on CIA. Like, my people, you're cool. Like, I don't know, but I'm just saying there's a lot of weird shit.
Yeah.
That is like really some deep shit, deep state things that are going on. Like, I mean, I hope to God, like, he gets other advice, like other outside guidance.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody should be eating his food before he eats it. Right. Like, honestly, like, that's just at the level. If you have 2 assassination attempts as a sitting president, I used to think like 5 years ago or 2 years ago, I'd be like, killing the U.S. president is near impossible. Mm-hmm. Even getting a bullet off you have a greater chance of, like, stabbing a shark, right? Like, this is not happening, right? Like, there's just no way. Honestly, I was like, there's no way. No one could ever kill a sitting president.
Yeah.
And then you see 2 really close calls.
Yeah.
You're like,
one that grazes his ear.
You don't foul that hard unless it's on purpose.
Yeah.
The U.S. economy doesn't foul this hard unless it's on purpose.
Yeah.
The Wuhan thing with China, like, dude, they were on the ropes. Yeah. The tariffs that he put on them, all the things, the right was rising. Biden's numbers were terrible.
Yep.
COVID happened, shut down the economy, and like, nobody knows how to handle that as a leader that's going through. They're trying to figure out what's the best way, and he's taking the advice, and then, like Fauci's ties to China. And all
Fauci, the NIH was funding Peter Daszak with EcoHealth Alliance, who was then sending money to the Wuhan lab in China. And then when the World Health Organization was doing their investigation, Peter Daszak was on the board that was doing the investigation. I mean, talk about an inside job. It's obvious. And, and what they've done so good is they've made telling the truth an evil act. Oh, you're lying. I mean, they flipped everything to where, if people were to add up all of their lies, and I'm not talking about Trump lies, by the way. So Trump, he exaggerates a lot, and people will consider some of the stuff he says lies, and sometimes he lies, of course, but his lies are different in the way that he's not turning a large group of society against the other side, like the vaccines. They said, if you don't get the vaccine, or if you get the vaccine, you can't get COVID. Then they said, if you get the vaccine, you can't spread COVID. Then they said, if you get the vaccine, you can't die of COVID. Yeah. So they went through and then, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So they turned society against you when all of it was bullshit. They lied consistently. The mask. Oh, you don't need a mask. Then they said, a month later, you need a mask. I was just saying that because the healthcare workers need the mask more. So I lied. He acknowledged he lied to the public then. And then it turns out, think about all the heat that we took over masks. And Cochrane did a meta-analysis study showing that masks were not effective in society, and that the cloth masks were complete bullshit. And I would have people, at least wear a cloth mask. And I mean, just remember all the hate that was coming at us when we're like, no, this is bullshit. We knew it was bullshit, yet we had to seemingly conform with what society was telling us was right and wrong, even when we knew they were full of shit.
Is it like Nazi era, isn't it? It's fascist.
I mean, you see how they could throw us in a chamber, man. You see 80% of the population was completely brainwashed. I mean, I say that because 80% or so in America got the vaccine.
Yeah.
And, there's some that didn't want it. Sure. But, for the most part, and there's studies that show that too. It doesn't take, you get about 20% of people in society that can think rationally. The other 80% are going along with whatever side they're on.
I was looking for that quote last night because I completely agree. Like, they just believed it. They went with it. You're like, okay, Like, I feel like that is what is happening during fascism. That's like, that is nuts. You're going to do this or you're the villain. Like, you are completely wrong.
Yeah.
Against everything. Like, it's insane.
That's what they do. I mean, they say, oh, we weren't mandating the vaccine. And this is their logic to people. Oh, we weren't mandating the vaccine. You just would lose your job. Well, that's like a mandate.
Oh, you couldn't eat in a restaurant.
Yeah. You
couldn't get groceries. But we weren't mandating
No,
it.
you could eat at home. So it's like, you want to just beat those people up because it's so disingenuous. Like they're saying that, and then the people that can't think for themselves, they just repeat it. Like, yeah, you don't trust science. All that bullshit. Trust science. That was it. Oh, trust science. You're telling me to trust science?
Yeah.
Like, I love science. Science is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
But you're telling me that I'm anti-science or anti-vax or, what are you talking about? Yeah. I'm just reading the data and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But that's where we're at.
They take that first level. They see the title. They don't do any research and they trust. It's just
trust.
They trust.
Yeah.
These individuals, like, somebody that reads the regular media is like, oh man, they don't have an ulterior motive.
Right.
The fuck they don't. Their whole thing is an ulterior motive.
Of course.
Paid from a corporation to get you to do something.
Yeah.
To either vote for something, to believe in something, for somebody to make money at the end of the day. It's like capitalism is went to the fullest extreme with these people, or they're pure evil. Like, I don't know what the source.
This isn't capitalism, it's corporatism.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's like corporations mixed with the government.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. But this is not capitalism.
Yeah.
I mean, this is corporations mixed with the government, and they're pumping out bullshit, and they have the power of the government to force you into buying these products, taking this vaccine that they have made hundreds of billions of dollars
and you
on.
can't sue them.
Taking a vaccine that they can't, that we can't sue them if you have damage. And so you have all these pieces. This is what's so hard. You have all these pieces, yet the other side right now wants to argue about it. It's like, how much more evidence do you need? I would be better if people say, I can't stand Trump, but they would acknowledge all the issues that I'm bringing up.
Yeah.
But somehow, if they were to acknowledge that, they would be for Trump. Yeah. Or, that's the boxes that they put people in. That's why it's hard. It's hard. Why can't society seemingly get along right now? It's because the other side's so dishonest when it comes to how they're ruining our country, the southern border. You can't have a logical conversation about that. Kamala not going through a primary. You can't have there's no logical answer to that. Joe Biden having dementia or some type of cognitive disability. Is he even president
right now?
You can't even
seen him.
You can't even say that. Like, this has gone on, and we've shown, and even when they finally get the truth, they don't acknowledge it. So it's hard to have meaningful and trustful conversations with the other side when all they're doing is gaslighting.
Yeah. I completely agree, man. It's sometimes it's just like, I just shut it off because I'm like Mel Gibson from The Patriot. Like, I just want to sit there and build my rocking chairs.
Right.
But if you fucking come to my backyard, I will start tomahawking everybody. Like, that's just how I'm like, I'm going to fucking be cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to hang here. I'm like, leave me the fuck alone. I think there's a lot of people that are like that. Like, do not come on my lawn, type shit. Well, you hurt my family, you hurt my kids. Like, then you're going to see people. Because it's just right now, right now, I can't do anything. We can have this podcast, we can have this communication, we could talk and maybe hopefully have these conversations. But it's just harder and harder to have these conversations with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, where you can go in and change somebody's opinion. Like, it's so hard now where you come with policies and facts. You're like, well, that didn't say it. And I would have those arguments all the time because I had residency in Dubai. And when you're in Dubai, you have there's not a lot of Americans, but it's like it's like Star Wars Cantina. You have all these different countries all come together. You can have dinner and all their guns are out the door. You can have some really good conversations. And I felt like in there I could be reasonable with people and argue my policy perspectives and give points of views, and you could have that. You can't do that in the US.
Right.
You can't, because people are like, I don't know, I saw some guy on Facebook and he's like, I saw what Trump did to New Yorkers. My family lived there. Like, You're talking about some shit 20 years ago. You have the Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
You're just really hate the guy. Like they hate the guy because they're brainwashed constantly. They just see these articles of like, he's a felon, he's this, it's all lies.
Yeah. Well, and they're brainwashed into just attacking anybody with a different idea or that points out facts. The facts don't matter. They don't matter. I mean, think about the list that we could make of all the ways we've been lied to by the mainstream media since 2020.
You know, the list used to exist and you can't even Google it now.
Oh, really?
I tried the other day. I was like, I wanted to show how many times like Trump's been right that they fact checked.
Yeah.
I can't, there's no way to put it in Google to get that information.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. And, you know, we've been gaslit over and over.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, think about the hypocrisy of the feminist movement and trans. So, you know, let's take abortion.
Yeah.
They say women should have the right to choose. This is a women's issue. So if I identify as a woman, do I now have a say in this? You know, if I'm a woman, do I get the rights of a woman?
Yeah.
You know, is that just because I say I'm a woman, all of a sudden I get the women's rights? You know, but, you know, they also allow biological men that think that they're women or are women, trans women, to play in female sports. And at first, the gaslight in 2020, by the way, was they were pushing a scientific gaslight. Like, oh, well, the science says there's no difference.
Yeah.
And enough people were like, this is complete bullshit. Like you have bigger bone structure, you know, you have years of muscle memory, you have all these things that we know. Yeah. Okay. We know there's a difference between a man and a woman physically, but they try to do the scientific argument for a while. Now there's just, well, you know, I feel like they should be able to play in women's sports because it makes them feel better. And competition doesn't, they're trying to eliminate, start noticing, they're trying to eliminate actual competition. They don't want competition because the more competition that we have, the more people are going to try to fight back. They want to make everybody gets a trophy. That started probably 25 years ago. Everybody just got a trophy, participation trophy, not winning or losing. And so this has been planned for a long time. You know, we're just kind of seeing it, but this has been planned for a long time.
Fucking live through the shit show.
Yeah.
Like what happened to mental institutes? You know what I mean? Like, honestly, like we used to, like I grew up in Philly, like near a mental institute. Like we knew that's where all the crazy people went.
Yeah.
Did crazy people just stop happening?
Right.
Right? Like, no, they're on fucking Instagram and they're saying now I'm a dude or I'm a girl. And like, you'd see they mentally have issues. Like they need mental help. And am I saying that trans don't exist and somebody feels like they're in the wrong body? Yeah,
of course.
But there's some dudes that are literally just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're in a dress, walking in and going into a kid's bathroom and things like that. Do you think it's a coincidence we're starting to see all these trans guys that are abusing children? No, it's just pedophiles are now putting themselves and saying they're that because then they get access to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're abusing it from every which way. And so
in the prisons,
we're pandering for maybe the trans community is, I don't know, 3% or
1%.
1%, whatever the fuck it is. But we're making rules for 99% of it.
Yeah.
For the rest of us, like that doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever.
Well,
do I think there should be some rights for some people? Absolutely. Do I think like here's a great example. My kids are like she was in kindergarten, and luckily my wife was attending a school trip, and I live in the South. It should be a school trip. It's supposed to be about a play, and it's just a musical. We go through. Show opens up. Pride flag everywhere. She's kindergarten. Pride flag everywhere. Two dudes dancing. All these things. And we're like, these are kindergartners.
Right.
Who the fuck signed this play up?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why is that even important? Right? Like my daughter should maybe see a play about history.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe about a father and mother in a family. I don't know. Something that would make fucking sense. Not that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, what is that ulterior motive and why are you starting that young?
Well,
unless it's a foreign government that is making and paying for this influence to desensitize and to feminize masculinity so it's easier to conquer.
Of course. And you want to do away with the family. If you have a strong family structure, it's a lot harder to take over than if you have a broken family. If you look in the black community, number one reason there's so much crime and poverty is because fatherless homes. If you take the father out of a home, you're going to have, and you're raising a boy, he might be going a little while because a mother, really by herself doesn't mean they can't. A lot of mothers do great jobs. Single mothers do amazing jobs, but generally they're not equipped to deal with a high energy boy. Yeah. And they got to raise them to a man, and they do their best, et cetera. But if you break up the family, if you look at Black Lives Matter, one of the reasons I didn't support them in the beginning was because it was on their website. They wanted to do away with the nuclear family. It was a complete communist organization. Yeah. And that's another thing. Well, I was saying since 2020, how much have we been lied to? People took it hook, line, and sinker. They were supporting a communist organization that wanted to do away with the family structure in America. How the hell is that supposed to help the black communities? You want to have less fathers in the homes? I know we've been going a while. I want to get on to Alcohol Armor. When did you start the company? How was that going?
Yeah, so I started Alcohol Armor with my work wife, Jameson. I think in business, you always have to have that yin to yang. You have your Scotty, I got my Jameson.
Right.
Like everything we do together, you know what I mean? Like it's my brother from another mother. And so he had like a CBD energy drink, and he's like, hey, we need to go to this. And I was like, bro, CBD. And it was good. He wanted to do it for like the day after a hangover to give you energy and chill out those vibes for it. And he's like, I want you to come to this company. And I'm like, dude, I'm not doing CBD and I'm not doing energy. Regulations, the laws, the bullshit. Like, you need to, for business, it just wasn't a good fit. But it really spurred me to start thinking of when I was working undercover, I was taking concoction of pills to prevent a hangover because I'm working undercover, getting banged up with cartels or whatever, and you're drinking, and then the next day you have to do surveillance or follows or, go back to a meeting. So you really have to live this life. And there's just a few ingredients I was taking always. But I knew that there was other anti-hangover stuff out there. Nobody really took over the market. Nobody became the category king. And I was like, what if we turn it to liquid, we make it taste good, we make it 0 calories, and we sell where alcohol is consumed? Like, you have to add convenience to the whole pipeline of drinking. So we came up with Alcohol Armor. It's a 2-ounce shot that you either put in your drink, you take it as a shot, one of the two, so you can mix it. It could be a mixer. Tastes great, and vodka sodas, tequila sodas, whatever. And then you have no hangover the next day. And I came up with the formula, and I was drinking at the time, and I was like, Googling, I'm like, what did the Chinese give alcoholics in the 1400s? They're like kudu's roots. I'm like, put that bitch in there. Yeah. So I put I beefed it up. I found a bunch of things like activated charcoal, so it absorbs the toxins. NAC, that's going to repair your liver, because they give you NAC at a hospital when you're ODing on Tylenol because you die from liver failure. You don't die from the Tylenol.
Interesting.
So we're souping up and recharging your liver. Milk thistle for your liver, asparagus extract for your liver. To really streamline it. So absorb the toxins, streamline. So I did some biohacking in my room of putting this together, hired a chemist out of California. And the first night I probably took $700 worth of vodka sodas in my face. I'm going to test this thing. Yeah. And I had to play paintball with some billionaire kid, we were raising money for a foundation. And I was running, I wasn't puking. I'm still functioning, and I was up on time. I was like, there's something to this. And so we started playing with it, and then, last year we went out to Vegas and taking over the city, man. We took down Wynn, we took out Encore, got the big clubs. We're in some of the pools at Caesars, Resort World, Hilton. Just kind of took an idea, concept, and realized that there's nothing nobody took over the market yet. And it's $1 billion market.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, it's a good product. I've used it as well, and it saved my ass from a horrible hangover out in Vegas. Actually, the first time in Nashville. The first time that we met was in Nashville. I think it was the day before the Operation Light Shine Gala here. Yeah. And that saved me.
You and Michael Ray, I think, right?
That's right. Yeah, we were going at it. But I mean, it's an interesting product because a lot of the nightclubs across the country could, add those to the table and say, hey, when you're done, do you drink it during, I forget, during or
just
after.
while you're consuming, you put no convenience. Like obviously you want to, just while you're consuming, because you want to battle it. Once it gets in your blood, you're going to have a lot of damage. We could still do a lot of work when it's in your blood, but it's like while you're consuming. And now we were starting to get data behind it. So one of the hotels basically gave, when they came in, they bought a bottle, they got a free 12-pack. And when they did this, right, they monitored all their key cards too. And so when they did this, instead of buying 2 bottles, which a crew would normally buy 2, they were buying 3.
Okay.
Right? Because you're also not as sloppy,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're consuming it, you're clearing, because it's just a science behind it, right? I can't say that it's not going to make you less drunk. You're still having all, we're just removing the toxins from your body while you're doing it. And then they're spending more money in the hotels and the casinos. So now they have a status. So we're rolling out for like 360 rooms in one of the biggest hotels, and they're going to be monitoring or giving it for free because they're paying $24.
Yeah.
And then they're costing $800 for a bottle.
Right.
So it's like,
it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer on mathematics on hotels, casinos, cruise lines. Cruise lines is where we're going to next. And in a club environment, in a bar, so if you're in Vegas, you charge as much as 1 drink.
Yeah.
Or if you're in Nashville, you would charge 1 extra drink. So like Kid Rock's place, if you're drinking 10 beers, you put 1 of them in there. Well, guess what? You're probably going to be back again the next day.
Yeah.
And you're going to spend even more money because you're not hungover.
Right.
So
how is the business going? How many cities are you in with it?
Yeah, so right now we pretty much took over Vegas. We're running out in 7-Elevens in Chicago. We just picked up 1,000 stores in Canada. We went from first year 250,000 in sales to this year we're projected for $3 million.
Nice.
So good growth.
That's great growth.
Not bad for 2 Army veterans that have no idea what the fuck they're doing. That were like, we're going to take over this market and really get after it. So
I mean, you're pretty much everywhere in Vegas, aren't you?
We're in a lot of places, right? Like Vegas is big.
Yeah.
But we're in the big boys.
We're in the nightclubs.
Once you get in XS, you're an Encore Beach Club. We have all the big names for it. The Wynn, an amazing property. Like they love it. They see the value. And usually the Wynn sets a standard for Vegas. So it's just a matter of time before we take over that whole city.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen you in a lot of places, and I know that you were out there really grinding it out.
Dude, it was fucking, like, because I was like, Vegas is going to make or break this company. So, like, I was like, this year, I'm getting in a condo. I'm going to be out there. And, like, everybody told me no. They're like, it's not going to work. And I just started annoying people.
Yep.
And then they stopped telling me no. They're like, all right, we'll give you a shot. We'll put you on the menu. And after that, it was just game on, man. Like, we just started grinding. It was crazy, man. Like if you would have asked me like 2 years ago that I'd be all these properties with this product, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's the end goal is to kind of get there. And now 7-Elevens and Amazon's blowing up and growing, and because once it works for you, you're fucked.
Yeah.
It's like it's pretty much. I was telling people it's funny because we used to go to the bar and restaurant conference, and their first year was like 2 or 3 years ago, and we had a tent in the very back. And like I had a cardboard sign, and all it said was like your first hit's free. And it was a little cardboard sign, and we were in the very corner and like completely sold out of all our product. People were coming up, and then this year we like gave out thousands and thousands of bottles, and it was just one of those things where it just keeps kind of compounding on itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just a grind and getting after it.
What are your goals over the next 5 years with Alcohol Armor, especially seeing how well it works?
Yeah, so for we'll sell, I would imagine, in 3 to 5. We'll exit to one of the big boys as you start, grabbing this market. I'm pretty much out of the day-to-day now. Jameson runs that. We have distributor network set up, and so I'm already off to my next adventure. I'm an innovator, creator. I come in, create it, get it going, let other people run it, organize it, and Alcohol Armor is not my legacy. My boy Jameson said it best. He's like, Alcohol Armor is going to change my life, but my next company is going to change the world. Type deal.
I love it.
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about the digital legacy?
Yeah, I can't just talk about that one thing. The lawsuit side of things,
okay.
For the patent infringement, I can't talk into depth for that. But yeah, so with digital legacy, it goes back to really like a need. So like 3.5 years ago.
Well, what is digital legacy?
Yeah, so it's suicide. What I noticed was the problem we have, like during that suicide prevention project, some of these cell phones were unlocked, and you have parents going through their data, right? And so right now we're at a point with our data where we give 100% of our data, or we give none of our data.
Mm.
And online, like, why am I saving my dad's voice messages? I save his voicemails, right? Like, why am I still at that point in time? And in reality, when somebody dies, your legacy, you're forgotten in like 2 years, if that. You get buried, like me and I will know each other, but like how hard is it for you to find a photo of me or us together, right? Like to really go through that. If you're not having it, like even or organize that, there's no real curation of content. And then another problem set was like I was working undercover in Haiti, and I was like, I just want to send, like I was doing a stupid mission. It was pretty fucking dumb. But I was like, dude, I'm like, I just want to send a message to my girls and my son, like, that, hey, I love you. Like, here's some really good things that I just want you to know that. And I had no way to kind of leave that behind. No, like, we call it a dead man switch. Like, if I die, this happens. So there's no dead man switch and no curation of content. So data is getting buried, security is getting harder, or it's coming fully unlocked. You don't want that to happen. And so as a way to curate your content for your loved ones. And so you can say is like for my wife or for anybody, if you get these photos, you get this data. If I die, you can come forward with my death certificate and it unlocks your data for the individuals. We have the ability to save on the blockchain. So we're talking about interplanetary file systems. So we don't know if we're going to be in cell phones in 5 years. You have future messaging you're going to be able to do. And then look, if you look at the crypto, what do you do with your wallet, your crypto wallet right now? Right? You got to go to a bank, leave a passphrase, hopefully then leave it in a will for it. There's no process. First, you can sign up for Digital Legacy. You can give the code and say, hey, wife, sign up. When I die, you get this. Maybe you don't like your wife and you want a will to just go to your kids. You save your digital will through the fucking trusted network on the blockchain and you give a whole different will to your kids. Yeah, it's a way to really take your content. And then the other side is like me and you, like say we're partying, we're going through, like you sign up for a system, I'm in the system. Every time we take a photo, it's going to scan the face. It's going to know it's your photo. It's going to put the picture of us in our buckets together. I see. In Ed's bucket and my bucket. So we know that I can go through and I can see my data and then use computer vision to rank and stack your stuff. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I got the patent back on it, which I was like completely blown away.
But you just got the patent back, right?
Yeah, in July.
Nice.
But it was just crazy. There was a big tech firm that they don't know an employee stole it and launched it. And so I had to wait until I got the patent to be able to then launch the company. So it was one of those things of just kind of waiting out around for it. And so.
Yeah, well, it's a damn good idea. And that might be alcohol armor too could be a big one, man. I mean, you build to a certain point. I think starting those companies are the hardest, but once you've built a little bit of brand, and you're in the places that you're in, I mean, you got the social credibility now to, just spread that sucker out. But this one is one of those that, could be a game changer because it's much needed now that you have the patent. That's your idea,
bro. It's crazy just to think that right now, why don't we have this already?
Yeah.
How cool would it be to be able to create your legacy and say, these are the 10 things about me, and it only goes to them, or you make it public, right? Like, do you think it's a coincidence you have NFL players have NFL kids?
No.
It's a generational knowledge. Yeah. So this is going to be a way to preserve your generation. Now, if you take it one step further to the full extreme, how do you create your avatar, your AI avatar of who you are without the history of who you are?
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
The evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, Altered Carbon. Have you ever seen a show of like how to preserve of who you are for the future to then, if I can make you do certain things and I can then curate your voice and your persona and your life and then preserve your life for your kids, your grandkids, everybody else. Can't do that without the history.
That's interesting.
And you have all these people. You have Apple. We're in these data prisons between we're in Apple or Google. How hard is it to go from Apple to Android?
Pretty hard.
Impossible. Fucking impossible, pretty much, right? Because you're in data prisons.
Yeah.
But if you have a nucleus in between, it's a quick transition.
That's awesome.
It's a quick switch over. Facebook, Instagram. If you would have died 15 years ago, you would have remembered on MySpace.
Oh, I would have what?
You would have been remembered on MySpace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, fucking, that's my legacy. I'm on MySpace.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. I still got the music playing from 311 and me in Hawaii.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, your top 8.
Yeah. So it's like, for me, I've always been inventing, but I come from like a very low course. My mom got mad because I said I came from a poor family. This is obvious, for a very low middle class family in Philly. And I always had an invention book and I would always draw them, come up with them, have them. And then no shit, like somebody else would create it. It would come to life. And I was like, damn, I had it. but I didn't know how to take that first step. I didn't know how to go 0 to 1. I didn't know like where do you go with it. Now it's like it's cost me money, but I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fucking try. Like I'm just gonna figure this out. Like maybe I need to fly to China and find something to mold it. Probably not the best thing. Like I got to patent around like hardware with helmets. And like I bought a 3D printer. I probably spent 30 days of trying to unfuck this. I've never printed something. You know, like spent like $5,000 I didn't have to try to build something on this 3D printer because I thought that was a waste. It was like trial and error, you know? So I spent like, I think there's a quote. It's like, you spent 5 years, you know, not getting rich, but learning lessons to get good, right? Like there's like something along those lines. And for it. So yeah, so with Alcohol Armor running, now let's move off to this next startup in tech, and I'm super excited. Alcohol Armor, though, if you know anybody looking for some celebrities.
Oh yeah.
You know, like there's a few guys out there who are like, hey, I think you'd be a good fit, man.
I mean, I can get it. Yeah, I can actually.
With some ambassadors, we know this will work for them. We're like, hey,
give it to a bunch of our friends. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'm going to see Jelly, I think, next week.
Dude, he would be perfect. Him and Post Malone are like the two ideal. Like,
yeah, yeah, we could also give to Yellow Wolf. Yellow Wolf, his crew goes pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, test this out and tell me this is not liquid gold. That's all I'm saying. Because if you drank, and it's like, and if it doesn't work for you, you're fucked anyway.
Yeah.
You know, like you're like, if this doesn't work for you, it's one of those things where you just kind of keep going, and it's pretty unreal though, because you almost quit along the way. You know what I mean? Like how many times, like this is our 3rd bottle change, our 2nd name change. You know, like the name was actually pretty funny because I was in Bogota, Colombia, and we were out night drinking. We were going to Cartagena to work undercover, and I had the little sample bottles, and it was called Not Today, N2D.
Okay.
And then I left them in my apartment in Bogota, and sure as shit, we're in Cartagena. I'm walking through like the old town, and I was like, bro, this is like going to war without body armor. I can do it, but I'm probably gonna get shot in my fucking chest, you know, like because I had this test samples. I was like Alcohol Armor, and I was like, and that's where the name came from. Was like it's your body. Now, granted, you can still get shot in your face if you drink a 5th of fucking whiskey. Yeah, you'll probably need like 15 of these.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
well, that's good though. I mean, you know, have you ever thought about really coming to Nashville and doing, you know, like because Nashville, you know, with all the musicians. It's like, you know, next to Vegas, I guess Nashville's probably the biggest party market, you know, like people that are out going crazy market.
We just did a CMA, Dustin Lynch. We sponsored a few of his events so far.
Nice.
In the next month, we're going to be like, our goal was Vegas, take it over, Nashville, Miami, New York.
Perfect.
You know, fuck Cali.
Well, good. It means we get to see you more here.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dude, absolutely, man. I'll be flying in.
Well, anything else in closing, man? We've been going for about 2.5 hours.
Dude, no, man. I had such a blast, man. I feel like I had to talk for you for like 5.
I know.
Easily.
Let's go. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thanks, boss.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it.